Our October the 5th, 2021 Lynchburg City School Board meeting. And as we call our meeting to order, we're certainly grateful for all of those who are attending, either in person or virtually. And as the chair, we certainly welcome public to be a part of all that we do, as this is a public meeting. And we will trust that you will adhere to our orderly procedures for our board meeting tonight. B, Section B, electronic participation in meeting. If the board would indulge me, in harmony with our policy, all right, in harmony with our policy BDD, the school board may conduct any meeting except closed meetings as outlined in policy BDC, wherein the public business is discussed or transacted through electronic communication means if, number one, on or before the day of a meeting, a member of the school board notifies the chair that such member is unable to attend the meeting due to a temporary or permanent disability or other medical condition that prevents the member's physical attendance, and two, the school board approves the member's participation by a majority vote of the members at the primary or central meeting location. In light of this, Chair is asking for a motion to approve the electronic participation of Randy Trost tonight as it relates to medical conditions that prevent the members' physical attendance.
I'd make a motion to accept electronic participation of Mr. Trost to tonight's meeting.
Second.
Been moved by Dr. Brennan and seconded by Dr. Carter that we will approve the electronic participation of Randy Trost per policy BDD. Any further questions or discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, if you would please call the roll.
School Board Member Trost.
Here.
School Board Member Dr. Brennan.
Yes.
School Board Member Ms. Morrison.
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Carter.
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Coleman.
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Nillis.
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Sinha.
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Gupta.
Yes.
School Board Member Mr. Harvey.
Yes.
Motion carries 9-0.
Thank you very much. At this time, if you will, we will go to Section C and approve our agenda and then do our Pledge of Allegiance, if it would be in order. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as presented tonight? And I do want to acknowledge that we have two standing committees, and it has been prior precedent that committees may well have a matter or two that we need to have some discussion and possible vote on. And so please know that in the future as we move forward with those standing committees that we have may apply. Is there any motion to approve the agenda as presented?
Move to approve the agenda.
And motion been made by Dr. Nillis, seconded by Dr. Carter. Any further questions or discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
School Board Member Mr. Trost.
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Brennan.
Yes.
School Board Member Ms. Morrison.
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Carter.
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Coleman.
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Nillis.
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Sinha.
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Gupta.
Yes.
School Board Member Mr. Harvey.
Yes.
Motion carries 9-0.
We would now stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. To the flag of the United States. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. What a privilege it is to do that, and an honor. At this time, we will now move to Section D of our school board meeting relative to public comments. And I do want to acknowledge that persons appearing before the school board will not be allowed to campaign for public office or promote private business ventures and should not use profanity or vulgar language or gestures, make comments about a public official or an employee that are not related to their official duties, engage in behavior that disrupts the meeting or intimidates others, or address the school board on issues that do not concern the services, policies, role, and responsibilities of the school board. Individual speakers shall limit their comments to 3 minutes. A speaker representing a group shall limit their comments to 5 minutes. The representative shall identify the group at the beginning of the presentation. A group may have no more than one spokesperson, and the total allotted time for public comments at the school board meeting is 30 minutes. Public comments are reserved for the public to provide input, and the board does not respond to comments, answer questions, or otherwise engage in discussion at this time. I do want to share with my colleagues on the board that we have by policy allotted 30 minutes, and it's in order for us to adhere to that unless there is some board member with some pending dynamic, but we will do 30 minutes. Our first speaker for tonight is Andrew Glover, representing conservative parents of Lynchburg.
Good evening. My name is Andrew Glover, and tonight I represent the conservative parents of Lynchburg, a group of 350 Lynchburg area parents and caregivers that are concerned with the public education system and its leadership here in Lynchburg. Unfortunately, one of the major concerns that we have is that we simply are not being listened to. This was perhaps highlighted best when a major candidate for the Virginia governorship, who is endorsed by multiple teachers and school unions, declared, "I don't think parents should be telling schools what they should teach." However, this type of belief system isn't limited to just radical school unions. Last Thursday, the head of the National School Board Association penned a letter to President Biden stating concerns with us parents speaking out against your policies, calling us, quote, domestic terrorists and perpetrators of hate crimes. Given that you have tried to arrest me twice, I can only assume that that is LCS's stance also. So what is this terrorism? It's the belief that individuals and families make the best decisions for themselves and their children, for their health, for their education, for their welfare, not the state. So at the beginning of my statements, I said that we were not being listened to. 2 weeks ago, our group sent every single one of you an email asking you for some basic information regarding the school curriculum and where to find information on it. Other than the acknowledgement that you received the email, I have not heard back from any one of you. In addition to our curriculum concerns, one of the other things that I'd like to highlight tonight is the quarantine policy currently in place here at Lynchburg City Schools. As you are all aware, last year's virtual and hybrid program that the administration put together was an unmitigated disaster, resulting in failing grades and a massive learning gap for students entering school this year, making this critically important to ensure that kids stay in school and can catch up on what they missed. Unfortunately, because of the over-the-top quarantining policies in place, nearly 2,000 students, or roughly a third of the school's population, has already been impacted by this. The current policy states that close contacts to a positive case that happen in the school, they have to go into quarantine for a minimum of 7 days, even if they get a negative test, resulting in these students falling even further behind. This seems straightforward on the surface, but unfortunately, it gets more complicated, confusing, and downright idiotic. For instance, if both parties are wearing a mask and the close contact also tests negative and isn't showing symptoms, why can they not go back to school? What's the point of that mask? If the close contact has been vaccinated, there actually wouldn't have been a quarantine required. However, we know that vaccinated individuals can be both asymptomatic carriers of this virus and catch it themselves. So why are we immediately letting one person back into the school who can spread the virus, but not the person who tested negative? We've even had parents who've been contacted 5 days after the close contact happened. Those students tested negative and had no symptoms, but were still forced to wait more days despite having been in school for 5 days since that close contact happened. In another case, an entire school bus was quarantined rather than just the students who were within 6 feet of the individual. And in one school, 2 teachers for the same grade level tested positive. One class was sent home to quarantine while the other was allowed to stay. In some cases, teachers aren't even being notified that their students are being quarantined, and they only find out after reaching out to the parents whose student was absent. To put LCS's quarantining policies in perspective, even without taking into considerations all the different scenarios I just outlined, this policy is even more stringent than the Centra healthcare system. Why does the LCS policy exceed that of even the hospitals? Quite simply put, the quarantine policy combined with the inconsistencies are wreaking havoc on our students' education. You are creating a generational gap that will not be recoverable. Please reverse course and work with us to implement a common sense approach to providing a quality education system for our students. And we look forward to hearing back from that curriculum concern. Still haven't heard back from you guys.
Thank you, Mr. Glover. We really appreciate your comments. Thank you, sir. Next speaker is Jane Sorensen, who is going to talk about children and education.
Hi, my name is Jane. Thank you for letting me speak, for one thing. And I do represent a group of about 10 women, and we're called Strong Together. I'm Jane Sorensen. I'm a mom of 2 children, one in the city schools. Being a parent is a blessing from God, and it's my duty to protect my kids and other kids and also ensure that they're taught truth and goodness. I believe that y'all are all here because you love children and you want the best for the children in LCS, for which I do thank you so much. I'm confident that we can agree that the protection of children's minds and hearts and bodies is a top priority for our school division. But I'm wondering, how did we get to this point? The SEL surveys that my son has had to take are invasion of a privacy of students, and they're very close to sexual exploitation. When my son was a freshman, Is that funny? When my son was a freshman, he was asked how many times he had had sex with someone of his same gender, among many other suggestive and manipulative questions. And he came home, like, what the heck? He was so excited to get to class, and then he gets that. This is a push-pull political technique, and it's designed to manipulate and alter beliefs under the guise of a survey. Sex in 9th grade. Hadn't thought about that much, but now that you mention it, through the poll or the survey, a sexual mind frame is normalized with the question, and then gay sex is even suggested, and that's all fine when you're a consenting adult. I really don't care what people choose on their own. These are kids. It's not even in their consciousness until it's intentionally planted there, and these surveys are damaging for our kids who are insecure, sensitive, and overly trusting, and who isn't all those and more when you're in high school? How did we not notice all this? I also used Go Follow It website to search the online card catalogs of a few of our schools. Middle school, 10 to 14 years old, had books that populate the search on, these aren't terms that I like to say out loud, but I'm going to, and I hope that you don't call me out for it, but this is what they're seeing. Masturbation, lesbian, gay, transsexuality, abortion, rape, child sex abuse, and a lot of police brutality. And this is middle school. High school has these subjects too, just a lot more, except they also feature more child sex abuse and pedophilia. Okay, I almost stopped there, but I can't, because you guys have to know this. Obviously, you can't know this to have this stuff in the schools. These are traumatic subjects, and the normalization of any of this is horrifying and criminal, especially for kids. I would think that everybody would agree with me on that. Beyond Magenta is a high school selection, and that includes a passage about a 6-year-old giving oral. I'm sure you can figure that one out. Won't say it, but okay, that's a 6-year-old. Devil's Peak is another high school selection, and that features sex with an infant. I mean, I was crying reading half of this stuff. This book is Gay. That's a high school selection that describes oral and anal. You can fill that blank too. There's no rational excuse for porn or pedophilia to be in any school that's protecting the children within it. There's really not. And I hope that you all agree with me on that, because if we don't, we're not setting our kids up for a lot of success. I have a list of books from our libraries, and I challenge you all. I have one for each of you. I challenge y'all all to do a little bit of research on these. Would y'all like your own children and grandchildren to consume this material and have people read this stuff to them or read it themselves? Exposure to porn and normalization of rape and pedophilia, lesbian and gay, transgender, explicit adult sexual material is damaging in so many ways, and it can set them up for exploitation and to exploit others. It can cause addiction, depression, social isolation, and a really distorted sense of reality, and a really distorted sense of what a normal adult sexual relationship is supposed to be about. I know you're not going to answer this, but did y'all know these materials are in our schools? And who approved them, and what was the procurement process for all this stuff? Were they mandated by the government, or did we say, yeah, we'll sign up, we'll take that? So they're subjected to these surveys, but they're also protected by the Pupil Protection Act. And I have an amendment, or I have the thing with me. It's an amendment in the CFR Part 98. It states that students shall not be required to answer sexual questions. Even in y'all's own handbook policy on page 47, that was violated and given these surveys. Also, parents are supposed to see surveys that have anything having to do with sex. They're not supposed to be asked about their sexual behavior or preference or anything else. And I'm sorry I'm a little bit heated about it, but I mean, this is a subject that is really, really pushed on them when they are not even mature enough to, half of them can't even drive a car. Parents hadn't been informed about the SAS surveys at all, not to mention the probing of sexual beliefs, identities, or preferences. They're minors, and it seems...
Ms. Sorensen, the time has expired.
Okay, well, it just seems more appropriate to call this harassment or grooming. Why has this happened? What can we do? And how can we protect our precious children from this? I have resources available for all of you, and I'm going to leave you a list of these books to research on your own. Thank you.
Thank you for coming tonight. Thank you very much. Our last speaker of record is Jeffrey Wooters.
Good evening, members of the school board. My name is Jeffrey Wooters. I'm a senior at E.C. Glass High School in Central Virginia Governor's School. First of all, I want to offer you all my thanks. for continuing to hold public comment sessions despite the amount of hate and vitriol that gets thrown at you from this podium. It takes a lot of strength to listen to all the things that are said, and I doubt that if I were in your shoes that I could handle it nearly half as well as you all have. So thank you for continuing to give me, as well as others, the opportunity to speak. I also wanted to thank you all for continuing to uphold a sensible and science-backed COVID mitigation policy. As of yet, we've only had to close one school, and for a limited time at that. Masking compliance at Glass is nearly 100%, with few reminders needed to be given. I see it in the slow trickle of COVID newsletters I get sent from administration, rather than the flood of cases we see in other schools. And I've yet to see any of my friends pulled for quarantine or contact tracing. But I'm not here to relitigate the science of masks. We know they work, and nobody acting in good faith argues otherwise. I just want to say a few words and make a few observations about science and data in general. Science is one of the great tools we have to explain how the world around us works. But many in our community have given in to a culture of fear, centered around science as the main offender. They are afraid, even if they claim not to be, of a world that looks increasingly different from how they imagined it would. And on some level, I can empathize. There are things to be afraid of, justifiably so, everywhere you look. I was told as a child that my generation would change the world, but now I don't even know if I'll have a world left to change. Truthfully, I'm terrified of what the future holds. But instead of giving in and lashing out in fear and anger, I want to use those emotions constructively to improve our world for everybody. One of the things that being on the Glass forensics team for extemporaneous speaking has taught me is that we can explain the world's problems rationally using data, facts, and yes, science to back up our claims. And the beauty of science is that it's weird. True and accurate science can be uncomfortable. It can be scary. And yes, the truth can clash with our perceived notions of our rights and freedoms. Saying that it never does is nothing but a political tool used to silence the dissent of the truth. And if we make use of that, we will continue blindly into the darkness of willful ignorance and existential fear. But most importantly, science drives us to grow and change as we learn new information. So knowing that, members of the school board, I urge you to continue to use science as your main tool in combating this pandemic, not the conspiracies or the tirades of the terrified. And as far as COVID goes, keep doing what you're doing, keep the mask mandates, and keep the other mitigation measures. Thank you, and y'all have a good evening.
Thank you, Mr. Wooters. The school board would like to thank Mr. Glover, Ms. Sorensen, and Mr. Wooters for taking the time out to share your thoughts with us tonight. Thank you very much. We'll now move to Section E of our meeting, student representative comments. And we're so delighted that both schools have outstanding representatives that will come before us through this particular calendar year. And we'll get started first with Jaden Scott, representing EC Glass High School.
Hi, everyone. Let me get my screen shared. Let's see. All right, is everything up? Oh, wait. Okay, it's saying that the screen share has failed to start. Okay, here we go. Okay, all right. So I will be presenting on EC Glass High School today. And so the theme for this month, for this presentation, for all of October, is breast cancer awareness. And so the Hilltoppers are contributing to this. We are acknowledging this. We are celebrating this. So every Wednesday, the Hilltoppers are coming in pink for the rest of the month. But then in addition to that, we are going to have a pink game as well. Our annual pink game will be this Friday. And I also do want to give a special shout out to a handful of students from EC Glass. They are Brady Mandeville, Jillian Nyland, Jade Persona, and Jeffrey Wooters, who actually just spoke. So if he's still here, I hope he hears this. But they are now semifinalists for the National Merit Scholarship. And they've moved on to against nearly 16,000 students from across the U.S. to compete for a scholarship. And so we just want to extend our sincerest congratulations, and we hope that you all do well. We are so happy to see so many students from EC Glass representing us. And then there is a picture of everybody. So Jillian is on the farthest to the right. Then coming in, there's Jeffrey, and then Brady, and then Jade is on the far left. All right, and then we also want to announce that our clubs are back in swing 100%. We've got our Environmental Action Club, Student Council Association is up and running, Fishing Club, Key Club. There's a lot more, but this is just what I was able to fit in today's presentation. So I've included some pictures. We had SCA giving out our sophomore and freshman t-shirts this past week during lunches. And then this is Key Club at the bottom, and then Fishing Club. All right, and also I do want to talk about Big Love, a play that was put on by EC Glass Theater. They're celebrating 40 years of excellence and opened this past weekend with their performance of Big Love. So yes, despite COVID and everything that we were confused about, we now know that we are able to do these things. We're happy to do these things. And so with proper precautions, we were able to have this show. And now on to athletics. Just like clubs and theater, our winter sports have begun as well. And I do want to extend a congratulations to our golf team who has earned the Seminole District title. Also, field hockey is making history right now with their 5 wins. They're still going strong, and we still want to cheer them on as they go, but they are still making history. And then in addition to our Hilltopper Wednesday pink, wearing pink, we're also going to do our pink game, as I stated before. That's going to be Friday at City Stadium. So if you would like to come out and show your support for the Toppers, just put on a pink shirt while you're there. And then we do have some pictures. Our golf team is at the bottom, in the middle, football, and then our field hockey team at the very top. And also National Custodian Day was on Friday, October 2nd. So in honor of this day, we definitely want to thank any and everybody who's a part of our Blue Crew at EC Glass. As of now, in today's times, I think that custodians are more needed than maybe ever. We have so many precautions in place. We have so many new things coming on, but instead of backing down, they're taking on the challenges day by day. Every day they're in there, they're working hard, and we appreciate every single one of them. And also, I wanted to reach out to a few students and see what their take on this school year has been, because yes, it is different, but we're back 5 days a week. We're back with face-to-face learning. So I did want to reach out, and this was one of my favorite quotes because I really think that it fit and it summarized what a lot of people were saying, that everybody is just really happy to be back. Yes, we know we have to be socially distant. We have to watch how many people are in one room. We have to wear masks. That's fine. As long as we're in school, as long as we're being able to still be social and still get our high school experience, we're okay. So thank you so much for that. And to wrap things up, I do want to extend another thank you just to all faculty and staff, because this year has been unexpected. It is far from typical. It is far from what we thought we were signing up for. But everybody has been in there 100%, giving it their all, and really, really stepping up. So I do want to say thank you to all of our staff, every Hilltopper, anywhere. All right, and that's gonna wrap it up for tonight. Thank you all so much.
Jaden, we want to thank you. You are back for a second year, and we really appreciate all that you bring as the student rep at EC Glass. We welcome now for the first time Eugen Kim, who is going to represent Heritage High School as the student rep. Go right ahead.
Thank you. All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Eugen Kim. I'm a senior at Heritage High School and Central Virginia Governor School, and I am the new Heritage High School School Board Representative, and it is such an honor to be invited to speak here today, so thank you very much for this opportunity. I would just like to start off with our motto. So the motto here at Heritage High School is, "We are pioneers." And the "we are" in this motto means that we are welcoming, encouraging, achieving, responsible, and engaged. Welcome to a new school year, everybody. The first day of Heritage High School was August 11th, and new student orientation for new freshmen and anyone who didn't get to step foot in the building last year was 2 days before that. We would just like to say welcome to our new teachers of Heritage High School, and we would just like to thank everyone for their hard work so far. I know, we all know that this year has been crazy, but our teachers have been working super hard. All the staff and members have been working so hard to let our students have a normal, well, semi-normal school year. So thank you to all our new teachers, our past teachers, and any of the staff and crew that made this possible. Some new things at Heritage this year due to the ongoing pandemic is a block schedule. And instead of cohorts, we are now using A days and B days to reduce the spread of COVID-19. On A days, students will be attending periods 1 through 4 in 90-minute blocks. And then on B days, those periods will be 5 through 8 in 90-minute blocks. Another thing we have implemented to reduce the spread of COVID-19 are masks. Masks at Heritage High School are required for all individuals inside the facility. And all this information, along with grade-wide expectations, were covered in the grade level assemblies during the second week of school. Moving on to the arts, Heritage from their first production of the year, which was a production of the play The Fantastics on October 1st. Congratulations to them. And Academic Support Program. This program is a new program, and it's designed to provide after-school remediation and tutoring for students, and it happens on Tuesdays and Thursdays. The HHS Literary Magazine, which is called The Pioneer, has started to accept magazine submissions, and if any Heritage students are interested, please email your submissions to the email address on the screen. The topic for this year is culture. I know that I think fellow students can relate. We are in the middle of college application season, and I wanted to let all seniors at Heritage High School know that the Beacon of Hope at HHS is holding FAFSA nights, and this is today. There's actually one today, and next Tuesday, and the following Tuesday, and this is to aid our seniors in the financial aid process. Some more college updates. Virginia College Application Week, where you can apply to Commonwealth colleges for free, is happening during November, October, and you can apply to any colleges in the Commonwealth for free. And just apply month, actually Virginia College Application Week is during this month, and during this month you can apply to any college from October 20th to November 19th. And just some extra things to help other seniors with college concerns and things like that. Their Beacon of Hope is holding a virtual college knowledge admissions panel on October 26th for any help with the college application process. And there are also on-site admissions during Virginia College Application Week, and you can actually meet those admissions officers from those colleges on November 17th. On to Heritage Athletics, and just as a side note, tickets are now $7. Our football team has been having a wonderful season. Some recent highlights are varsity victories over Lynchburg and Glass at the Jug Bowl, and JV victories against Appomattox and Dinwiddie. Some upcoming games are this Friday, varsity versus Brookville at 7 p.m., and this is at Brookville. And the following Monday, I believe, JV has a game against Brookville, and this is a home game. And on the 15th of October, varsity has a game against LCS at home. Moving on, congratulations to our competitive cheerleading squad, and they placed third at the Northside Cheer Invitational. So congratulations to our pioneers. Moving on to volleyball. Some highlights for the volleyball team are the varsity victory against Randolph Henry and the JV victory against Liberty Bedford. Some upcoming games is the game against JS, and this is an away game on the 14th. And an important game that's coming up is on the 19th, and this is versus Liberty Bedford at home. And this is actually our senior night, so the volleyball team will gather and honor their seniors on their team. Last but not least, cross country has some upcoming meets. On the 6th of October, there is a meet at Sweetbriar. On the 13th of October, there's a meet at Rustburg. And on the 20th, the cross country team has Seminole Districts at Sweetbriar. That's it for me. Thank you so much for watching. And I just wanted to say thank you to everyone who gave me this opportunity, and thank you to everyone at Heritage High School. And we've been having a great year so far. Thank you.
Thank you, Eugen, and thank you, Jaden. You all have very hireable voices, and well done. And we met with them, and they'll be leading us through some very critical issues as we move on throughout the year. Thank you both. At this time, we'll now move to Section F, which is our finance report, and we're grateful for Dr. Edwards bringing forth Kim Laconich.
Yes, and Kim Laconich is here along with Matt Smith, who will also be given a presentation. So we will start with Ms. Laconich.
Good evening. Tonight I'm going to be providing the board report, the financial report through August 31st. The adopted budget remains the same as the previous month at $100,308,875. We have provided a detailed revenue receipt report. As of August 31st, we've received 9.7% of our revenue. We also provided the expenditure report that's showing a 11.61% expended, and then the expenditures, including the encumbrance, showing at 80.55%. You had requested on a quarterly basis an update of the health insurance, so I have provided that also in the report. It has where we are to date, and as well as where we were to date the prior year. That sort of leads into our special presentation, but I wanted to see if you had any questions.
Any board members with questions? Dr. Gupta.
Are we using CARES money to offload or counterbalance some of the regular budget items? I don't see an item line there.
This report is off of your operating budget, so your CARES is going to be a different fund, so you're not going to see that here. But yes, I mean, as far as, we had some positions that were put into CARES, and all those were offsets of our budget.
And I've never seen a red line. This time you have two numbers in red. So what's the significance? It's just the minus outgoing, that's why you have it red?
Are you referring to the expenditure report or the
main sheet you had?
The main sheet, that's for the health insurance?
Yes.
Those are the claims that have been paid to date. So they were just negative, so I just pointed those out.
There's no other significance attached to the color?
No, no, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Gupta. Dr. Brennan.
Mr. Collins, thank you very much for providing the health insurance information. We appreciate it. A couple of quick questions. One is that I noticed on the health insurance reserve, it's the same amount from last year to this year. Does that reserve not gain any interest, or we do anything with that to supplement that account?
It may have received some interest, but that's held at the city, so it wouldn't be something that we would receive.
I'm sorry, what I'm asking is the numbers exactly the same? Is that the way, what you expect?
Yes, so that is the reserve. It was funded through fund balance return, and we have to request for it to go into the reserve. And over the last few years, any requests that we have made to increase that has not been approved, so that has stayed the same. And because we were able to adjust from within our own budget when we did have any overages, we have not withdrawn from it. So the only time that it would change is if we came back to the board and the board either said, yes, let's put some more into it, and then the city council approved it, or the reverse, that the claims were high and we had to withdraw. So yeah, that should stay the same.
Okay. And then also, is there any concern regarding the amount of money that we have that where the receipts are not matching what we have for disbursements for this year?
We always have that on our radar. I do think that beginning of the year, because our July, the employer's contribution gets recognized in the prior year, it makes it look like it's, the beginning year has started off really lopsided, but that's typical. But we still are looking at, I mean, as you can see from where we were last year, we have a lower amount. And I think that's why we're having that special presentation and bringing that other item to the board for tonight.
Thank you very much. Thank you for providing that information.
Thank you, Dr. Brennan. I believe Dr. Gupta has another question.
So do you have a dollar amount on how much money do we have for the unfilled positions in this year up till now? So you have allocated money for positions. How much of that is left over unfilled?
Are you referring just to the health insurance budget or budget?
Unfilled positions.
I do not have a dollar number tonight for that. We are still filling those positions and then able to see where they were in the budget, because we budget for midpoint and then where everything lands, and then we would be able to ascertain that.
Any further questions for Mr. Carnage on this part of the report, the finance report? All right, then thank you, Mr. Carnage, and I believe that the next person is coming up now to talk to us appropriately.
And this is our corporate benefits consultant, Mr. Matt Smith, who is going to give us a short presentation for the full board. So welcome.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening.
Good afternoon, I'm not sure. Appreciate you
afternoon,
having me
yeah.
here. So I put together a 5-year history, just to give you sort of an overview of how things have been going and what we're facing going forward. So if we could go to the next slide, I'll get right into it. So this charts the experience of the plan from 2017 through 2021. 2021 is based on a projection of claims through August. So the other years are actual numbers. 2021 has a little projection in it since we have about 4 months to go. So just to give you an idea, the bottom line you see there is the contribution by employees over that period of time on a per employee per month basis. So over that period of time, the employee contributions went from $163 a month to $173. At the same time, the employer, which is the next line up, went from $446 a month to $512 a month. That gives us a total contributions based on those active employees in the plan, not the budget number, of $609 in 2017 to $685 in 2021. At the same time, the actual cost of the plan went from $633 in 2017, and I'm projecting the cost for 2021 at $772. That's the fourth line up where you can see the costs went down, but then you can see where they've gone back up. If you take a little note of 2018 and 19, you can see our contributions actually exceeded the cost based on just the actual enrollment for those 2 years. We had 2 very good years there, but it's sort of gone the other way these last 2 years. And then just to give you a little perspective, that top line is the trend line. So based on normal medical pharmacy trends, I set everything equal on 1/1/2017, excuse me, and said where would we be today if we just had a normal trend line. And you can see that's the top line, and it's above all the other numbers. So if we could go to the next slide, I'll give you just a summary of what that all sort of means. So over that period of time, the employer contributions, on average, have increased 3.5%. The employee contributions have increased 1.5%. And I'll come back and talk about that when I'm done. Total contributions, 3%. At the same time, the actual costs have gone up 5.1%. So you can see we have a gap of about 2% over those 4 years between the funding based on the actual enrollment and the actual cost. That's the bad news, I guess. The good news, we were 2.3% below trend on average over that whole period of time. So most groups, I know this is an arguable point, would say if my health insurance costs only went up 5% a year, I'd feel like that's sort of a victory based on what's been going on. So that's sort of the good news within all that. Now, as far as the employees, I went back and looked. I had records back to 2012. And of note, what happened in 2017, we got together with the city. Prior to 2017, pretty much all the school benefits were done separately and we're not necessarily the same as the city. 2017, we made an effort to put everybody together, have consistent benefit plans. So as of 2017, whether you're a school employee or a city employee, benefits are identical. We used the leverage of the larger group to help in terms of administrative and reinsurance costs. So we all pay the same administration and reinsurance. On the other hand, we are self-funded, so we do pay our own claims. So there is a cost sharing in terms of reinsurance and admin, but the claims that are schools are the claims that the schools are paid. So it's not completely combined where we all just pay one rate. So we have some standalone, but it's sort of a hybrid model there. So in 2017, the city only had one benefit plan. It was actually richer than the richest school plan. The schools had two plans in place. As far as I can tell, back to about 2012, there was a low plan and a high plan. Low plan had a $750 deductible. The high plan had a $1,500 deductible. I think the mix was roughly 50-50 where the employees would enroll. So in 2012, the rate from 2012 to 2018, and then when we moved to one plan in 2017, the rate that was used for the employees was the plan from the high plan. So it's actually, when you look at the employees' contributions going up 1.5%, within that, we had a big group that moved to a much richer plan and actually paid less money. So there's more to it than that. So everyone ended up with a $650 deductible plan, and nobody paid any more money. The people on the high plan paid probably half of what they were paying, at least if they were single. It wasn't as dramatic if you went to the other tiers of categories. And then the only rate increase from 2012 through 2020 was a 10% increase in 2018. So in terms of that 10-year period, the average increase to the employees was probably less than 1%. Now, if we can go to the next slide, I did a little comparison, and this is a little dated because it just takes time to get these studies together. The 2021 study is due out any day, but I have not seen it yet. And what I've done here is just compare what your employees pay by tier compared to what the average school employee in the state of Virginia pays. So for instance, if you look at the single category on the left, a Lynchburg City school employee pays $31. The average state employee, and this is in 2019, pays $62. For employee plus one, the schools, Lynchburg School, $257 compared to the state at $311. Employee spouse, $322 compared to $410. Employee children, $318 compared to $466. And family, $505 compared to $676. So if we could go to the next slide, what you'll see is that for a single school employee is paying roughly 50% of what the average state employee pays for coverage. Plus one, 83%. Employee spouse, 79%. Employee children, 68%. And family, 75%. So right across the board, particularly in the single category, the employers are paying less than on average what's going on in the state of Virginia. So we had put together, based on our ongoing negotiations for the 2022 plan year, a sheet that is not on the slides because there's too much data, but I think everyone has a copy of it. The heading is City of Lynchburg Public Schools Health RX 21-22. And this just gives you an idea of where we're at, and we're basically just about wrapped up in terms of where we're going to land for 2022. You can see I'm projecting for fiscal 20, well, for fiscal 21, which has ended, I projected there was a deficit of 407,000. There was expenses of 12,005,000 compared to income of 11,598,000. For fiscal 22, I'm projecting income at 12,213,000. That's if there's no other changes to contribution levels. And projecting the expenses at 12,702,000. That would leave a deficit of about $500,000. Now, one of the things you want to keep in mind, because we are self-funded, it's not a smooth process, so to speak. So when I look at the period from 17 to 22, we had 1 year where we were 13% above expected. That was the first year. But the costs were still better than the prior year. That was the year that we switched. In 2018 and 2019, both those years were roughly 13% below expected. And that's probably what you remember, if you remember everything. That's where we had roughly $1 million surplus those years, and very good experience. Well, that's, those things happen, but they don't happen forever, unfortunately. A group your size, eventually you're going to run with the trend line. 2020 and 21 are going that way. So we're in a position where, in my opinion, we have sort of got to close the gap. Now, I know there was an increase to the board contribution of 7% on July 1. What we had suggested, and it's not reflected in any of these numbers because it hasn't been approved, was that matching that with an employee contribution increase of 7% on January 1. But that's just a proposal. And then as far as fiscal 23, it's basically at this point too early to make projections. What I would suggest before the budget gets done for 2023 is we get 6 more months of experience. And based on that, sort of fine tune the projections for fiscal 23. So there are some updates to the sheet. The sheet that you have was based on the information we had when we last met with the Finance Committee. I will get an updated sheet out, which reflects some changes that we've made to the pharmacy in terms of the way some specialty drugs are paid for that will save us some money. And in addition, we got some additional concessions in the negotiations of the administrative contract. All those things together saved roughly $700,000 for a calendar year. I think one of the struggles everyone has is, and I hear this all the time, is, I don't want to raise my employees' cost for health insurance because I just gave them a raise and now I'm going to take it away. And I hear that and I understand that. The challenge is when you have healthcare costs going up 5% a year, which are good numbers, how over time do you manage that if you don't raise employees' contributions? You have 2 choices. Schools typically pay about 75% of the cost of the plan. So if you need a 10% increase and you don't want to increase the employees, that 7% increase needs to be 10% for the schools. Because of that, they're only paying 75% of the cost. The only other tool that you really have is to change your benefits and up deductibles and co-pays. And we did make a change back in 18, but we haven't made any changes since. The thought was, with everything that's going on these days, to try to not make any changes this year if we could avoid it. The only changes that were made were basically minor. There were no changes to deductibles, co-pays, out-of-pockets. There was a change where they will offer the live health online for a $5 copay instead of $15, so that'll be a little benefit for some of your employees. I don't know how this works, but they have a text med online where you can actually do a text visit for no cost. They've added dermatology as a specialty under the telemed, and then there were just 1 or 2 other minor changes. So I'll be glad to answer any questions anyone has.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Smith, and again, thank you for coming to the full board, your presentation earlier at the Finance
Glad to do it,
Committee.
thank you.
We will have another item in new business around premiums, but this is for discussion. Any questions from the board at this time for Mr. Smith? All right, Mr. Harvey?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. When we talk about a 7% employee contribution increase, what is that in average dollars per employee? Do we have that information?
It's relative, I can tell you for, for a single employee on the plan, they're currently paying $30.80, so it's $2 or something like that. That does, when you get to the family category, they're paying roughly $500, so it might be $35 for the highest category. Those are pre-tax dollars, so they'll go through the Section 125 plan, and, they'll effectively see as probably somewhere between a 75% and 70% of that in terms of a change in net take-home because of the tax break going through that Section 125 plan.
So we're talking about in between $2 and
Probably
$5
$35 roughly for families. I could give you an idea. I show that we have, I think I have that number here. I think the vast majority are under the single category. Bear with me for a second, I think I have that.
Mr. Chair, can I say for like
Yeah,
there is this other document that's under a further item that has this information on it. It seems a little confusing that we're kind of looking at them separately, but under, let's see,
You're referring to?
health insurance premiums under new business.
That is correct.
There is the other document that has the information about the premiums and what their changes are, and
That
the
is correct.
costs are. So we're gonna talk about that at a different time. We're gonna discuss that.
I was under the impression that we would with the action items associated with it. Mr. Harvey, your question, however, is on the floor.
Yeah, the reason why I wanted that is because I think, some of these numbers can be scary when we talk about a 7% increase, but we actually associate a dollar number to it. It helps everybody better understand and recognize what we're talking about. So that's why I appreciate the.
That's a good point.
We want all of our employees out there to know that we're doing everything we can to continue to do the best work we can for you in this regard. So thank you for that, Mr. Harvey.
I did find those counts. We have approximately 930 singles, 101 employee plus child, 116 employee spouse, 83 employee children, and 193 families.
Any further questions for Mr. Smith? Dr. Brennan?
Yes, Mr. Smith, the document that we have that have all the numbers that you mentioned, could you please go through that one more time? There are a lot of numbers on there, but can you help us with your grand total or how you came to the grand total for 2021, and then walk us through what the grand total is for 2022, those numbers?
Okay, so I took the actual enrollment, the current enrollment,
Which is?
1358. Now, that includes some of the other, that's everyone on the plan. So that includes STEM, Governor's School, yep, Laurel, 1358. And I applied the employer contribution and the employee contribution. This was based on this is based on fiscal 2021. So this does not reflect the 7% increase that went into effect for 2022. So based on the actual enrollment, I came up with the employer total at $8,030,000, employee total at $2,815,000, for total income at $10,846,000. And then Kim might be able to help me with this, but there's two additional pieces where funds are available. One is to the extent that you've budgeted for a position where someone didn't take the health insurance or it's a vacant position, there's always a little extra money there. That was $183,000, and then there was grants available of $569,000. So I came up with a total income of $11,598,000.
So that was the cost for health insurance overall for 2021?
No, that's the income.
Income, that's right. Okay.
Income.
Okay.
Total cost is the next line, the fiscal 2021 expenses. So that's incurred, and it includes expected RX rebates of $12,005,000. So based on that information, I came up with a deficit of roughly, it was around 3%, $407,000. For fiscal '22, I used the results from the RFP for calendar year '22 and the last half of '21, based on my projections. And I came up with the cost expected to be $12,702,000. In terms of the income, Kim had provided me the new budget number. So instead of going back, I had not redone the sheet with the new employer contribution by tier. I just plugged in the $9,398,000, which was the budget number with the grants, added the $2,008,000, which was the employee contribute through payroll, came up with the income of $12,213,000. That left the deficit of roughly $500,000. Right, so yeah, this is based on some updates that I have that we've just gotten recently.
So we have on our sheet, I think, a deficit of 779,000.
Correct.
That's not correct.
That's not, right, that's been updated based on negotiations.
So what is that now? What number is that?
It's, so the total expected cost, $12,702,998, which would leave a deficit of $489,581 if we made no other changes.
As compared to 407,229 from this past year?
Correct.
So pretty similar, pretty close.
Right.
Okay. And then when you talk about the 7% increase for employees, is that stating that there's no increase for the employer?
Well, you know, we have it's not, I wouldn't call it unique, but we have a situation where employer budgets fiscal, plan is calendar. So normally when you have a calendar year plan, you normally make changes to the employees coincident with the change in the plan year. So the employee changes happen on January 1, the employer changes happen on July 1. So this basically, my projections at this point assume the 7% that was budgeted for fiscal 2022 from the employer. But at this point, I haven't included the employee, a change to the employee, but that would happen January 1. It was my understanding that if there's probably not an easy way to change the employer budget mid-year, that would be something that we would look at when we looked at fiscal '23. Although it certainly wouldn't help if there was more money available.
So could administration help me with that piece? We budgeted about 1.5 million in our budget increase for health insurance costs for this year. So did that go in place on July 1?
Ours went in, the 7% that we included went in on July 1.
And was that 7%?
Yeah, that was, I think we gave you 5, 7, and 10, and we went with 7.
Okay. So we've made a 7% increased contribution for this year that will then carry into 2022.
January 2022, yes.
Okay. And then, I'm sorry, because I'm not very good with the numbers, but if you do not do the 7% increase for employees, we had the 7% that was done by employer, by Lynchburg City Schools, and what's the deficit?
That's what you see, well, you don't see it on your sheet. I'll get you an updated sheet. That was the 489,581.
Okay.
So, you know, just roughly, if we did increase the employees January 1, 7%, that's worth approximately $200,000 for a year. So that would lower that fiscal year, that's 6 months, about $100,000. So the 489 would go down to roughly 389.
Okay. And I'm sorry, I could do one final question, Mr. Chair.
Go right ahead.
So you'd mentioned the idea that the benefits that back in 2017 are a point where the two plans that were previously held by Lynchburg City Schools were merged into one, or one plan was chosen, which was the Cadillac version. And those benefits haven't changed since that time. It seems like the approaches that some corporations will take is that they will look at their benefit package in order to try to help control their premium costs.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's one of the two tools you have, basically, or three
Right.
tools. One is employer pay more money, employee pay more money, or lower the benefit plan, and
Right.
basically make the employees that utilize pay more.
Mhm. And I know you said that it's been a difficult year on a variety of levels, but why should we not have considered that, or why should we not consider that other than, you know, this year is challenging? I mean, each year is challenging, so I'm not sure it's going to get worse.
The health insurance is always challenging.
Right,
I agree.
right.
And I'm not sure I could give you a good answer to that. I can tell you, we did make some benefit changes, and I believe it was in 18, I'd have to double check for you, where we went from a $600 deductible to $750. The out-of-pockets went up, some of the co-pays went up. So we did make some benefit changes. Typically, you would not want to make benefit changes every year. As far as, you know, why is this year any different? I mean, I think that's probably an arguable point. We certainly could do that. I think probably late in the game at this point for this year. But there's equal schools of thought on that, and they both have merits.
Sure. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Brennan. Dr. Gupta.
So your future predictions of loss ratio, are they based purely on our historical data, or data based on, I know the surrounding counties don't matter much, but surrounding counties and other private employers in town?
I'm sorry, I didn't, as far as the projections going forward?
The loss ratio calculations.
Right.
How did you arrive at that for predicting future loss ratios?
Well, you know, basically, I use industry trends. They're roughly, it doesn't matter who you talk to, whether it's Anthem, United Health, PCHP, Aetna. They're all within probably 0.5%. They're all between 7.5% and 8.5% trend. So typically what we do is we extract any claims. We do have specific stop loss in place so that if any one individual has an excessive amount of claims, those come out and we pay reinsurance for that. But based on net claims after reinsurance reimbursements and the enrollment, we project forward basically using a 12-month period of claims. Sometimes we'll use 24. Group your size, we would normally use 12 months, most recent 12 months claims, and we would project them forward based on the trend lines.
So let me ask it again. What is the average loss ratio for the clients you consult? I'm just trying to see, our loss ratio is more than 100% based on your prediction. We are giving more in benefits than we are collecting in premiums. That's what I mean by loss. You understand?
Okay.
Loss ratio.
You know, that's sort of a moving target. I can tell you most clients try to fund, if they're self-funded, probably 1% or 2% above expected. So that gives you a little margin if claims go a little higher than expected. Over time, over time you will come in at expected by definition, and that'll give you the ability to build up some funds so that when you have a bad year, you can sort of offset that. Because, you know, it's not like it just goes bad and stays bad. You know, you have a bad year, it might get better again, things like that. So in answer to your question, most would say, I want to fund at least at expected. And if I have some leeway, I'd try to get it to about 2% above expected, just to give myself some margin. We're not in that position right now. We're below expected, as you said.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Gupta. Mr. Trost, do you have anything, or any other board member to ask Mr. Smith?
No, that's very informative, thank you, and that's very excellent questions.
Right, then, Mr. Smith, thank you for coming tonight, and again, you with the Finance Committee earlier, so thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
This will move us now to our Section G, our consent agenda, and board members, tonight we have two items. One is our school board meeting minutes from September the 7th, and then our human resource report that you have from September the 27th, outlining the dynamics there. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Been
I
moved by
second.
Ms. Morrison, seconded by Dr. Brennan. Any questions or discussion? Hearing none, we would ask that, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
School Board Member Trost,
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Brennan,
Yes.
School Board Member Ms. Morrison,
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Carter,
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Coleman,
Yes?
School Board Member Dr. Nellis,
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Sinha,
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Gupta,
Yes.
School Board Member Mr. Harvey.
Yes.
Motion carried 9-0.
Thank you very much, and there's nothing else to report out, Dr. Edwards, correct? No. All right, at this time, we will now move to Section 8H, rather than 8H, School Board Member Reports, and we do want to thank all of our school board members that are very involved in so many capacities, and so we'll hear from those individuals at this time. First, our Finance Committee Chair, Dr. Nellis.
Yeah, those Finance Committee met to go over health insurance, have a discussion which we've already had, so I won't belabor the point. We did agree to change the October and November meeting dates from the last Tuesday. Well, I should say we changed October 26th to October 25th and November 23rd to November 22nd. So Dr. Brennan could attend.
Thank you very much.
That's really the big news coming out of Finance Committee.
I'm sorry, I meant to tell you that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and you all are doing a fine work in that committee. H2, Governor School Committee Chair, Dr. Goop.
We didn't meet in October. Our next meeting is scheduled on November 1st.
Thank you, Dr. Gupta, and your work on that, I'm very thankful. H3, the Law Regional School Committee Chair, Dr. Sharon Carter.
I do not have a report at this time. Our next meeting is in December.
Thank you, Dr. Carter. The STEM Academy.
No
Dr. Nellis.
report, we have not met.
All right, thank you, Dr. Nellis. And Legislative Advocacy Committee, our Chair, Dr. Sinha.
Okay, well, the committee met in September on the 14th, I believe. We finalized what we think is a pretty good list of legislative priorities. Quite a few are carried over from last year. One or two were edited or changed to update, and then we added a few per some VSBA priorities, and then one based on a, what was that memo from the, sorry, it was on holding harmless for
Oh, yeah,
enrollment.
yes.
So you've all had a chance to review that. Any questions or comments, concerns?
I just want to thank the committee for their work on this. I think it was a really nice job to update it and very clear, Dr. Senior, with the documents of what was changed, what was added, what was deleted. But I, as one board member, thought it was very good. Thank you to your committee.
You're here.
Can I get a motion to
Ooh, I'll make a
approve
motion.
it or adopt it, or?
I'll make a motion to approve the legislative agenda as proposed by the Legislative Advocacy and Community Relations Committee.
Second.
We think that, and we'll explore this later. I think when something comes from the committee, it may not need all of that.
Oh,
But that's fine. So is the board clear that we are wanting to affirm these agenda that has been advanced to us at this time? Any questions or discussion? Madam Clerk, if you could please call the roll.
School Board Member Trost,
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Brennan,
Yes.
School Board Member Ms. Morrison,
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Carter,
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Coleman,
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Nellis,
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Sinha,
yes.
School Board Member Dr. Gupta,
Not present.
School Board Member Mr. Harvey.
Yes.
Motion carries.
We will continue with the committee, and you can record Dr. Gupta's vote during the break.
Thank you very much for that. The second order of business is the breakfast with your, well, it's Take Your Legislator to School month. We have done that historically as a breakfast with our legislative delegation. Last year, we did it virtually, which seemed to work out very well for all parties concerned. Thought we had a really good discussion. When we last talked about possible dates for this, there was concern because November is so busy with the Thanksgiving holiday, and then the week before that, we all have VSBA convention. So that kind of just leaves the first 2 weeks of November to do a breakfast, if we could. We had talked about perhaps moving it to the early December, which I'm not opposed to. When the committee met, we had tossed around the idea of doing it in January, but after attending the Legislative Advocacy Conference a week or so ago, which I will report on shortly, I'm of a mind that that would not be wise since session starts January 12th. So, any thoughts on a possible date for that? Most importantly, our superintendent, where were those dates?
The 1st, the 2nd, or the 5th?
November 1st, 2nd, or 5th. 2nd is election day.
It was a little tricky last year. When we did
It was. And we have Veterans Day on the 11th, which will keep a lot of people out. So 1st, 2nd, or 8th, you said? 5th.
These are possible dates to have it.
Well, those are when our superintendent is available, and it would be very good to have her present.
The thoughts of the board around the 5th.
Fifth works for Trost.
Well, to the chair of the committee, it appears to me that right now, November the 5th would seem to work. I don't think we need to carry that for a vote as such. I would just,
Yeah, that is a Friday, and that would work for me.
okay.
But let me know.
Yeah.
It's possible that there may be one or two of us that would find that not workable, and we may just still go forward. Nothing personal by that, but this isn't like our VSBA master training where everybody has to be there. I think the main thing is to get our priorities across to our delegation. And so, great, we'll set it for 5 o'clock and November 5th, long day, and I'll start getting ready for that. I'll model it after what we did last time, pretty much same kind of schedule.
We included city council members.
We
Yes, we
did.
did.
So we had our state, national, and local delegations invited. Thank you so much.
I'm sorry, Dr., did you say a time for that?
I think we started last time at around 8 or 9.
Yeah, that'd be
We're
great.
not doing an actual breakfast, but
Right.
it will be like first thing in the morning. So I'll check with last year's what we did.
Right.
I don't recall. That seemed to work for everybody.
Perfect.
But I'll send out a memo just to kind of get a consensus on what works or if there's any conflict there. Great. I had the privilege of going to the Legislative Advocacy Conference sponsored by VSBA. It was quite informative. We had several presentations, one by the National School Board Association, pretty much telling us to keep our chin up. You know, it's been a difficult time. We've not nearly had the disruptions and upheaval that you hear in some of the worst cases, even in our local area. So I have to hand it to our community for, you know, bringing your concerns and your comments, but it's been fairly civil and kind. So I'm very grateful for that. I do want to recognize that. There are some real horror stories out there of people being harassed, followed to their cars and such. And we just, to my knowledge, none of that has happened to any board member here. So that speaks well of the Lynchburg community. Then we had a presentation on a lot of the CARES and associated COVID funding that's come around and the particular reporting requirements. And I won't go into that because it was extremely detailed. And I just kept saying to myself, Kim will be on top of that. Not me, Kim, other Kim. So, but if she does have any questions or concerns, I do have some slides. I don't know how helpful they'll be. But we do, and I think some of the reporting requirements are still being figured out. So, but it should be fairly easy to comply with since we itemize everything in our budget. To me, the most advantageous presentation was by the VSBA Legislative Advocacy. And so they talked about a number of things. One is the carryover from COVID. Virginia fared better than most states in terms of lost revenues and such. So there's no real concern of significant or harsh draconian budget impacts. There is the effort to continue to hold harmless school districts for lost enrollment. That's a statewide phenomenon. People are choosing to homeschool more than they otherwise have traditionally. And then there's the possibility of vaccine mandates, which could either come from the state, depending on who's elected. And that was the other thing. They had to be very tentative with what they were talking about because everything's kind of up to what the election results are. And given that things are pretty polarized, they could go dramatically in one direction or the other. There's very little in the middle. There's an effort through the Assembly on school modernization. And that was a pretty fascinating discussion about how many school buildings in the Commonwealth are over 50 years old. And of course, we have quite a few of those. And so that dovetails nicely with our facilities master plan and assessment. And so those two should be coming together at about the same time. So it's really nice that we have that. Then there's the budgeting for additional, and the VDOE will support additional SOQ positions for support positions, wraparound services, psychologists, social workers, and such. There are likely to be some mandates coming down involving alternative education and I guess required number of seats or how to do that. On issues of handling disruptive students. That seems to be a growing concern in all our classrooms across the Commonwealth, and mandates for increased employee training. Then there's the issue of labor relations. I think it's assumed that if Democrats win, that there'll be more in terms of public employee unionization, dropping of the right to work laws. Of course, if it goes the other way, it'll be just the opposite. So it's hard to say which way that'll go. And then it was really cool. We got a little lesson on how advocacy worked and lessons learned from COVID. And one big takeaway was that social media can be very useful. If you want to get a hold of a legislator, tweet them. Or, unfortunately, some of our delegation doesn't have Twitter accounts, but you're likely to get a response doing that. And it's funny, I called Ben Klein's office the other day and said about a particular thing, and I could just tell from the way the person answered the phone that, no, they don't really care. This isn't going to go anywhere, because they didn't even take my name or address or anything. But tweets do the trick, so definitely have to look at that. I also talked to a number of people outside of the conference. You could attend virtually, but I chose to go in person, and I'm really glad I did. For one, Dr. Coleman was there and introduced me to quite a few people, which was really nice. And a big takeaway there is how school districts are entering into collaborative agreements on funding a lobbyist rather than going it alone and financing that to advocate on their behalf. And so that'll be something that the committee will be talking about, whether we want to do a local regional alliance or if we want to do an urban school alliance or some combination of both. that's something we will discuss and see if that's a possibility and whether or not we need to add anything or budget for that and how best to do that. And then finally, the Capitol Conference will be January 24th and 25th in Richmond. As the committee chair, I plan on going, but anybody else who would like to go, I sure welcome that. I think it's a chance to meet with people in person and see things going on, and it's just our special day there in Richmond to talk to legislators and people in the General Assembly.
Well, it goes without question, Dr. Sinha, that was a magnificently detailed, thorough report, and all of the information that you, or at least I have here, I hope that you will look at it because it's rich and will be very helpful. Madam Clerk, if you could please make note of the January 24th, 25th conference. Some of the school boards, once again, it's not that far. I'm not talking about going across the country with NSBA. But I know that maybe Bob and I don't know who else has gone to that. But some of the other school boards have a good number of their board members who actually go around to the respective
I think Bill went last.
members of General Assembly. Yeah, very good. So if you want to go to that, we need to try to find a way to make sure that happens for you, okay? Any further questions of our chair of our Legislative Advocacy Committee? Excellent job, and thank you very, very much. All right, that will now move us to our next group, the Education Foundation. Dr. Sinha and Mr. Trost.
I have no report.
All right, thank you so much. Hearing none from Mr. Trost. Will be next, and Dr. Coleman and Dr. Gupta, and to my knowledge, we are waiting on the members of council to give us a report. Dr. Edwards, have you heard anything different? Dr. Gupta, anything? All right, please know that that is upfront. We just don't have any further information at this time to give to this group for our decision-making purposes. We will now go to 8, which is Partners in Education. And let me just state, as Dr. Brennan will give comments, that when our very capable and able chair at the time, Susan Morrison, decided that she would continue her work, not as chair, but on the board, and I became chair, I said, Susan, you did such a good job on that, you might well continue. And she did. Prior to that time, as Dr. Nillis may attest to, the board chair was always one of the two people or the person. And so now that that has happened, I will be, unless there's any other statement from the board, working with Dr. Brennan in Partners in Education as the chair. Dr. Brennan?
I have no report from Partners in Education. I do want to thank the Finance Committee for changing their dates for our meetings so I could put my day job into that. And I also want to thank Mr. Harvey for filling in for me last week for that meeting when I was away. But no report from Partners in Education.
Thank you, sir. Lastly, the Beacon of Hope, Dr. Nillis and Dr. Sinha.
No report.
No report.
Thank you all very much. If it is the pleasure of the board, I'd like us to get through our comprehensive strategic plan, and then we can take a break before unfinished business, which was Section I, Comprehensive Strategic Plan. Dr. Edwards.
Yes. So recall this is the section when we dig a little deep into some of the objectives in our comprehensive strategic plan. And this month we want to talk about summer and the achievement of our students during our summer program. So I've asked Dr. Jordan to join us virtually to kind of give us a quick overview of some of the progress that our kids made who participated in the various summer school programs that we had. Dr. Jordan?
Good evening, board. I get the pleasure of giving you an update on the strategic plan goal number 1, which is student growth, development, and success. I am going to share my screen. I am specifically highlighting the YMCA Power Scholars program today. Can everyone see that graphic? You also have this in your board docs package. Can everyone see that? Are you all able to hear me?
Yes, and we can see it.
Excellent.
I see.
Lynchburg City Schools partnered with the YMCA Power Scholars Program to serve students from all 11 elementary schools and Hutcherson Early Learning Center. The YMCA, in partnership with Bell Excel Summer, released the Lynchburg City Schools Summer Impact Report last week. For those of us who are in Lynchburg City Schools right now, summer seems like a long time ago. So this report just came out last week, so it is hot off the press. The Lynchburg City Schools Power Scholars Summer Program served 727 students in grades pre-K through 5. 607 of those scholars took both the pre and post assessments in the program. So 727 students came to some or all of the program, and 607 completed both the pre and the post test. Students attended 19 days of programming with the exception of Bass Elementary, which starts in the summer, so their programming was 15 days instead. The average daily attendance was 80%. The attendance goal for the Power Scholars Program is 80%. So we were happy to be able to celebrate in the midst of returning to a 4-day-a-week summer program. We met the program's attendance goal. So we met the target attendance goal. The program goal for academic growth is to see at least 1 month of gains in reading and 1 month of gains in math for every student. As you can see there, Lynchburg City Schools students on average saw 3 months of growth. 3 months of growth in 19 days of programming. This is a huge success. This is exceptional growth for the program. Students received 57 hours of core instruction if they attended every day. The other information here is collected through staff surveys and family surveys. So I want to give you a little bit of information about what you were seeing. 58% of the staff responded to the survey. So out of the 58% of staff that responded to the survey, 88% recommended the program. And you can see some more details on the bottom of the impact report. 137 staff members worked with the YMCA Power Scholars programs at various sites. The 137 staff members participated in 6 hours of professional development apiece. So that's where you get the 822 hours of professional development. Staff members this year had to adapt to a very different type of curriculum through the YMCA Power Scholars program. We did our best to mitigate COVID spread. Prior to this summer, YMCA Power Scholars used a lot of shared materials. We had many returning teachers, instructional assistants, coaches, site directors who were familiar with the previous curriculum supplies. So it was a major learning curve for people to get used to a more limited amount of curriculum that was for the individual students. So staff members really adapted to a COVID mitigated summer program. The next information comes from family surveys, and I wanted to let you know the 97% of families who found the program welcoming. This is a very small sample size. 12% of families responded to the family survey. And when we talked with Power Scholars, when we talked with our local YMCA representative, they sent home paper surveys, they sent home survey links to try to make sure that we had more family responses. Lynchburg City Schools did not meet the goal of 50% survey completion. So I want you to know that information based on the family surveys may be a little skewed because only 12% of the families responded to the information. I really, really want to highlight the amount of growth that students showed during this program. When we talked to Rebecca White, the director of the summer programs, she told us to expect 1 month, possibly a month and a half in a summer such as this. And those would be great successes. And we were absolutely floored when the information came back for 3 months of growth within the program. We want to thank everybody who made this possible. School administrators were on committees planning for summer programming as early as December of last year. Site leadership through the program, all the teachers, instructional assistants, instructional coaches, support staff members, transportation department, school nutrition department, the list goes on and on. It took a village to make summer a reality, and we're so happy to share that our hard work paid off, and it's paying off in student outcomes. We will report the first round of quarterly student growth, student achievement to you all in the October work session. So this is just a preview of student data at this time.
Thank you, Dr. Jordan. I do want the community to know that we have a comprehensive strategic plan in our school board meetings. We try under the superintendent's leadership to inform you of some of our goals, and this is clearly one of them, and we will build on it from there. Dr. Edwards, any concluding statement on that?
No, I'd just like to thank Dr. Jordan and the summer school staff and the administrative team who put all of that together, our partners at the YMCA, and I think it's very important that we recognize that this was 19 days of instruction coming off of having had a hybrid school year. So I'm just so pleased with the students and their families for their stamina and their dedication to really get back to the business of learning. So this is a great start. We are hopeful that the fall will continue this level of growth, if not more, as we continue to serve our students. So thank you, Dr. Jordan.
Thank you, Dr. Jordan. Dr. Edwards, if it is okay with the board, we'll take a 5-minute or so break and come back and move along into section J. board members and all of the excitement that is going on in various ways for members of the board. We are going to now move to section J of our agenda for tonight. And under unfinished business, we will have Dr. Edwards lead us through the various components of our LCS community update.
Okay. So thank you, and for those of you, if this is your first time watching, this is where we give you a hodgepodge of things that are going on in Lynchburg City Schools, in addition to combining that with our monthly COVID update. And I did receive the COVID dashboard from the VDOE, and I think of note on the dashboard is our total percent vaccination rate for Lynchburg is 40.4%, compared to Campbell at 44.5, Bedford 45.9, Appomattox 42.4, and Amherst 45.7%. So we are creeping up in terms of vaccination rate, but nowhere near the state average for Virginia, which is about 60.6%. And I just say that to mention that, again, trying to keep the schools open 5 days a week, we need to use layered mitigation, which is wear your mask indoors, practice social distancing to the extent possible. 6 feet is great, 3 feet is recommended. In some cases, because we do have all of our children back, we have to adjust that, particularly on the school buses. And if you can get vaccinated, please do get vaccinated. That helps with slowing the spread. It's not 100%, but it does help with slowing the spread as we continue to see more and more children, which is something new that we did not have this time last year. We did not see the number of children being affected with COVID-19 as we do this year. The student reps gave you an idea that not only are we in school in person with academic rigor and following up on what Dr. Jordan said, with after-school activities that you saw also at Heritage High School for remediation, but also our athletics and arts and extracurricular programs are also all up and running. And I'd just like to say again, these are things that our kids deserve, and our 2 student reps said it's an unusual year, but they are happy to be back. We want to keep them back. So we will continue practicing our COVID mitigation strategies. I will say they change very rapidly. The guidance from the CDC, from the VDH is often updated pretty quickly, causing the very folks who manage it to try to respond as quickly as possible. And for those family members community members who note that, you know, the CDC or VDH just updated their guidance, why aren't you following this right now? I do want to remind our community that our COVID response team is a group of individuals who work in our schools as nurses, work in our administrative offices as administrators. Sometimes it's guidance personnel that help out with making contact tracing calls. It's our entire student services department. These are people who have full-time day jobs in addition to what they do in terms of trying to manage the COVID. So I do applaud them for the work that they do, and as quickly as they can move and contact families going forward. So with that, I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the updates that are going on right now as we wait for vaccines to be available for children under the age of 12, which, if you've been listening to the news, should be maybe at the end of this month or as early as November. We are working with VDH to see what the best options are for our community. When the vaccine was offered to secondary students, we did partner with them to offer opportunities for secondary students and their families to get vaccinated. So we're looking to do that again to provide opportunities to the best of our ability to get our students vaccinated. There's some other things that we are going to participate in, including the VISTA COVID testing program. And I will caution folks who are reading and looking at social media at times when there are stories that say Lynchburg area schools. By that term, much of what's being talked about are all of the schools in the area, including the county schools. But sometimes it's not us. And in the case of divisions that have been committed to participating in the VISTA testing program, which I'll let Ms. Brown and Ms. Pugh talk about in a second, we, Lynchburg City Schools, are participating in the program, even though I think a recent article said Lynchburg City school area schools are not. So if you ever have a question about that, please dig deep and ask so that we may provide you with pertinent information. I do want to turn it over to Director Brown and Ms. Pugh to just give the board a quick overview of what is VISTA, what does that mean for our community, where are we in queue in terms of VISTA, and what the next steps are in terms of our partnership and working together with the Department of Health. So, Director Brown and Ms. Pugh.
Thank you. I'm going to let Director Brown speak on VISTA. She has been involved with several meetings and has met with them, both VDH and the Department of Education, who are working together on this partnership. So, Ms. Brown, are you there?
Yes, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Screening testing for assurance, better known as VISTA, is a program in which we will be screening pools of students and staff weekly to check for students or staff being positive for COVID. We will be doing random testing of these students and staff members. And also as a perk, anyone that are having COVID symptoms, we will be able to provide testing kits or tests for them to screen so that we can get information back sooner to know if a student or staff person is positive, to know whether or not to isolate or quarantine them in a quicker manner within the pool of tests that we do. In regards to where we are, we've submitted an application to the Department of Education in terms of our numbers in regards to students and staff, and then also the required personnel we would need to assist us in operating this program. Tomorrow we have a meeting with the vendor that's in charge of screening and doing the testing, so we can discuss with the Virginia Department of Health, and we're going to discuss and come up with a plan of how to select randomly the students and the staff to be tested and come up with a plan. After that process is completed and we've come up with a plan together with the Virginia Department of Health in this agency, the next step would be for the Department of Education to move forward with their memorandum of understanding, and then for us to move forward with hiring staff and also starting the testing process. And hopefully it should move very quickly within the next 2 weeks. In the board docket, there is a flow chart that kind of gives you the timeline in regards to the time that it takes in regards to each of those steps. Within that timeline, we're actually on that third step in making things happen with meeting with the vendor. So that's kind of where we are in terms of trying to maintain the safety, making sure that our doors are open 7 days a week, making sure that we're only isolating or quarantining the students and staff that we need to,
and being able to react very quickly to the concerns of our community with keeping everyone safe within the schools.
Just want to add that there is grant money that comes with this from VDOE. So once we've gone through the necessary steps, we have completed the survey that moves us on to the process of being awarded some grant money to help us with the hiring of some of the staff that are suggested to help us run this process and program. So the financial burden is not solely on the division. There is some grant money to assist with that.
Thank you, Director Pugh. I was going to add that. So I know there's a little bit of a delay between what we're hearing here and the participants. In addition, just to kind of summarize, there are two parts of this. One part is the random testing of staff and students, regardless of symptoms or quarantine or anything like that. That is the major part of the VISTA program, is the random testing. As Director Brown said, the perk of that is we also are afforded the option of diagnostic testing for those who have been quarantined, who have to go and get a test. We've experienced some delays in getting tests and waiting. This would afford us the opportunity to have those tests done quickly, and it would be part of that grant, and the VDH would provide the tests, particularly in our case if we have families who can't afford to get the test. So we are looking forward to that. This process is very new to us, so many people had lots of questions, including myself and a whole bunch of superintendents who are also exploring various options to do this process. It's new. I imagine that once we get started, we're going to learn a lot and have to do like we've done with everything else, is kind of morph and shift to see what's best for our students. There are a lot of resources that they provided us, including some templates for communication, for consent, and a whole bunch of documents that I know Director Brown and team in their meeting tomorrow will go over in much more detail with the VDH and the VISTA folks to make sure that we have a clear understanding of what we're doing. So my purpose for bringing it up tonight was more at the introductory level, just to let the board and the community know that we are exploring this option and that we are learning much more about it as we progress through the next 17 days of this process, and we will continue to keep the board posted as to our progress and where we are with that.
All right, questions, Dr. Gupta?
So you mentioned the consent form, so I'm assuming they're minors and the parents will be giving consent. So if a parent decides to opt out from testing, what are the procedures in place, or opt in, opt out from the parent?
So that's a very good question, one that we are exploring. Like I said tonight, we have not dug into all of the extreme details of what's conditional for part of the grant and what's going to be required of us, unless, Ms. Pugh, I don't know if you all have an answer to that since you've been meeting, but you haven't had a lot of meetings.
Yes, it is my understanding that from one of the meetings, preliminary meetings that we had with VDH and VDOE staff, that in order to be part of the random sample for our students, there is parental consent for those students that are under 18 for them to participate. And we also need, I believe, consent of our staff to participate. So if they don't choose to sign the consent form for those students, then they would not be selected to participate in that random sampling for the week.
The literature says it's voluntary as well. Literature.
Yeah. Yes. So it is.
It's not mandatory.
It's not mandatory. It's based on consent.
Thank you, Dr. Gupta. Dr. Brennan?
I just want to thank Director Brown and Ms. Pugh, and I'm sure the other administrative staff for following up on this and putting this program into place. It's been a big push for the CDC for a long time to have testing in the schools. So to bet that happen is great. And I think they're also very clearly state that there should be permission given before the children or staff are tested. One question is, I know that you all, as Dr. Edwards has already pointed out, are working more than overtime to deal with a lot of things. Does this program supply personnel also to do the testing? Do they kind of do the whole package, or is this then given to the schools to do?
They provide personnel to do the testing. And so, for example, we would have a testing coordinator, and then we would also have clinical staff to hire, and then also we could hire a mitigation specialist. One thing that I did ask Dr. Edwards and Ms. Pugh for to add into the packet was a field position, someone to help with the setup and taking down of those testing sites as we're going from school to school or location to location. So with the grant, what DOE asked us for, they asked us what did we need to make it smooth to get up and running. And then also we'll talk to VDH tomorrow again because we have weekly meetings with them to help us come up, with a plan to make sure that we're looking at every position or every support that we need to make sure it runs as smoothly as possible.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you very much.
Yeah, they provide the vendor that we are partnering with does provide the trained staff to come in and conduct the collection of the participating students and staff. But we would need those positions that Director Brown mentioned to help coordinate internally.
Thank you, Dr. Brennan. Dr. Carter?
Two things. So those positions that the school will need, are they funded through the grant also? Okay. And the other thing is random testing. Is this of all staff or just staff that are not vaccinated, or it doesn't matter?
It is, yes, the grant helps to fund the positions, the coordinator positions, the positions that Director Brown just mentioned. Those are covered under the grant. And staff, again, would have to consent to participate in the random testing, whether they're vaccinated or not.
Thank you, Ms. Morrison.
How will the information or data be reported back so that we can see results of the effort?
It's my understanding, and correct me, Director Brown, but the sample is a very small sample weekly. There are no names really connected to it. They get results back within, I think, 12 to 24 hours. And then the company, if there are any positives, will come back in, and then they identify those that are positive and do work with us and do some further testing so that we know if there are any positive cases.
Okay, thank you.
And so, Dr. Carter, that will be housed with our testing coordinator for the data that you're looking for and that we need. All of that data will go back to that our one centralized data coordinator to manage.
Thank you. Dr. Nilles.
Where is this program in place right now?
It's in place right now in Culpeper, Virginia, and I can get you a listing of the places that it's kind of been up and running for a while. Charlottesville also have the program, and I can give you a listing tomorrow of the places.
So, sure, and then the next question is how effective is this?
It's new, Dr. Nilles. The program is new. So I can't give you the data on that. I can give you the data that they have from other states that they've done the research and they've shared with us. And it's actually in the second document that we provided for the board, and I can pull that out and share that as well.
All right.
So basically, with the testing, if you have a large participation rate, what they've seen is that the positivity rate has went down. within the schools. But it also reassures the parents, the teachers, and the staff that, you know, we're following mitigation plans, we're following mitigation measures, but also that we are not over isolating or over quarantining people. And it also, you know, helps us keep those doors open.
So I can only speak anecdotally. If your positivity rate's going down because you're doing more testing, I'm not sure that means a whole lot. You know, the people that are symptomatic that go out for tests and turn out positive, you're going to have a high positivity rate. I understand from us, and I appreciate your efforts and what you're trying to do and administration. I just don't see this as, it's going to be a new program that's complicated. There's a lot of moving parts, and I don't know if it's necessarily been piloted all that well. I think there's potentially a risk to have this kind of get real complicated real quickly when we start rolling it out. It obviously depends on the competency of the vendor. Initially, I was thinking there was going to be a lot of testing throughout the division. I'm thinking, you know, we have 1,000+ staff and upwards 7,800 students over 18 schools and some other buildings, and how are you going to get testing, I mean, truly randomized testing among all those. So I'm really interested in seeing what the details are here.
And I will tell you, part of what was important to many of us as superintendents is the diagnostic testing. When we have to quarantine children or students or staff members who may have been exposed to someone positive, and I think almost all of you have received at least one letter from one of our schools, being able to test them and get them back into school quickly, with the goal being, obviously, we want our staff and our students back in school as fast as possible. And part of being able to have access to the diagnostic testing is to participate in the random testing pool. Part of a condition. Also, along those lines, when I talk about getting students and staff back into schools, and I will discuss this a little bit later, but when when students are out for an extended period of time, we understand the impact of that in terms of their learning, even when they're being provided with alternate assignments and things to work on. When staff are out for an extended period of time, the impact is not just on the staff member that is out for that extended period of time. It is on their coworkers who, if in a given day, they have one period to prep for their class and grade their papers and contact their students who were quarantined and make sure that they stay up and give the information, that time is often taken away while they have to cover the absent staff members' classes. And that we've done that for years. That's how schools have operated, but we haven't had the degree of quarantine and absenteeism due to quarantine that we've had this year, which means many more people are being impacted by an absence or a quarantine throughout. And we're in October. It probably feels like May for many of our staff members for how hard they're working. So any efforts to try to get students and staff back in school as quickly as possible to minimize the impact. The other thing is we're just not sure where we sit in terms of the requirement that may be coming down from the feds with if you have staff, a building of 100 employees, which we know Lynchburg City Schools does, and if we're under the OSHA requirements, which we know the Commonwealth of Virginia is, that we may either find ourselves in a situation where we have mandatory vaccines or mandatory testing, weekly testing. We are not situated, have not practiced weekly testing here in Lynchburg City Schools. And if this is something that may be in our future, and I say maybe because I don't have those tea leaves for that, this might actually give us an opportunity to see what it's like, and exactly what you said, Dr. Nillis. Once we get into it, we may recognize there's a lot more to it, and it may need to be changed or morphed or modified while we do that. But that's just the reality, unfortunately, that we find ourselves facing and I'll preface it, as an educational institution trying to address a health crisis with folks who, on our end, with the exception of our school nurses and a few select staff, most of us are not trained to face a health crisis. So we're doing the best that we can in trying to manage what may be coming our way, what exists in our schools, and just trying to keep as many folks healthy and committed to the cause of educating our kids.
All right, we certainly can come back, but I see Dr., okay, Dr. Gupta?
So hypothetically, if, assuming vaccination does help with controlling the virus, and everybody who's unvaccinated had a parental consent not to test, so will that reduce the value of this program or the goals?
That's one big hypothetical question you just threw my way. And again, without it being mandatory that people have to do the random testing, again, not understanding what may be coming our way from the feds or from the state, I can't really answer that question except to say at this point in time, on October 5th, it's not mandatory that unvaccinated or vaccinated staff or students must commit.
I have a follow-up. What is the protocol to share results with the parents, positive or negative?
I believe if it's a positive result, we would do the same as we're doing right now when we find out that there is a positive result. I'm not sure about if your child has been randomly tested where that falls. There may be some details in there with that, and I don't know, Director Brown or Deputy Pugh, if you've been able to answer that question. If a family commits to doing the random test and the test is negative, is there a communication protocol for the family?
That has not been discussed in any of our meetings. I do believe, as I mentioned, they will do the random sampling, and if anything comes back positive, then they will come back on site within 24 hours to do that, to identify those that were positive. And then I believe we would just move forward with the same thing that we're doing now in terms of contact tracing. And we would, certainly for the positive results, we would certainly let those parents know for the students.
All right, Dr. Carter?
Is this under a contract, or are we committed to participating in this program for a certain period of time, or can we withdraw if it's too complicated, or?
Yeah, there is an MOU that we have not signed that would probably outline all of those details. And right now, we just committed to exploring, having meetings and having a company assigned to us to apply for funding. It's a way to get the money, to get the help that we need in terms of having the additional positions that Director Brown mentioned in terms of testing.
And also, just thinking of retaliation, if it's random, who would know whether your name was picked and you decided, no, I'm not doing it this week, or I don't want to participate, but then you may change your mind next week.
And I have had the utmost trust and appreciation for what I call our COVID response team, which is a handful of people who know who's been exposed, who's been 3 feet or 6 feet in front of. And I will tell you, probably the most frustrating thing that our families and our staff feel is when they get the letter and they don't know who. And we get that question all the time, like, I got a letter, it doesn't say specifically me, but how do I know for sure that I wasn't in the same room as the son, blah, blah, blah. So there's a lot of confidentiality that happens that is for the good in terms of the process, but may not feel so good if you're on the other side of that, so.
Well, I know if we can decrease the number of letters and calls that parents get from this program, that will be the benefited that.
Mr. Harvey?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think I share some of the concerns that I believe that Dr. Millis has started to voice, as well as Dr. Gupta and even Dr. Carter. The one advantage I see to this is we have access to testing if we need testing, either symptomatic testing or required testing based on vaccine mandates that may or may not come. But I do agree. I think it sounds like there's some complexity to this program that's going to kind of take our eye off the prize, so to speak. Our COVID response team is working incredibly hard now, trying to trace and notify and communicate and keep everybody up to speed. And I wonder if this is one of those things that just kind of is a distraction to us more than a help to us. And so I agree with Dr. Carter. I would like for us to have some type of, opportunity that we can pull the plug on this if it becomes too burdensome for us. Because I really don't see the benefit other than us helping to provide some numbers. I don't see how in any way this is going to cut down on the number of letters that we send. Because to me, it looks like we are creating a pool of people to be tested who are going to be folks that are taking this very seriously, probably already vaccinated, definitely wearing masks, following protocol. Those are going to be the ones who are going to be willing to step up and help. I think we've seen a lot of the numbers. The ones that are the concern are the people that are not going to participate in this program. So I just worry that we're going to get sort of a false negative that's going to distract us from what we need to be doing.
And your point is very well taken. We feel the same way in terms of all of this and exploring possible options. I don't think anything right now that's COVID related is, wow, this is the best thing that's happened to us since. It's just, we are in a state right now in terms of where we are in our ability to keep schools open. And the one thing, and just to give you an idea of how this has evolved, if you think back to when we first began vaccinating folks, and Lynchburg City Schools stepped up, we had a very high vaccination rate, and we all were very hopeful that vaccinated staff did not get COVID. And in the beginning, when we started talking about breakthrough cases, it was very rare that they got COVID, although we do know that your possibility of ending up in a hospital is extremely minimized. However, we see that even vaccinated folks can still not only have, but also transmit COVID without being symptomatic. So to some degree, very small, random testing may actually catch some of that we might be unaware of, because if you're not symptomatic, then there's no reason to really be concerned. So there's a little bit of that. How much of that it's going to affect, I don't know. I am a trained educator leading a health crisis issue right now, doing the best that I can, trying to make the best decisions from the seat that I'm sitting in right now. And right now, this is where we are without also knowing what else we're going to be required to do or might be optional to do. And I will say there has been some talk and some questions as to, and across the Commonwealth, is this something you use for, contact sports where you can't have a mask and practice social distancing? Is that something that you do? Some schools have looked at it that way as a way to really keep your sports programs up and running without quarantining a whole team or a wrestling team or anybody who has close contact just by the nature of the sports. At this point, we're just open for communication possibilities to see how this may be able to assist us without, and I'm not a fan of overburdening my staff, and you're going to see by my next couple comments when we're done with this, some things that I would like to do to take some of that burden off the staff.
Dr. Carter?
Now, I want to clarify, but I don't see this as a negative. I was just asking questions regarding our commitment, and you said the MOU, and also regarding retaliation. But what I'm hearing is the turnaround time is 24 hours, and that's significant. That'll be great, and then we can trace from there. And I was going to say something else, I forgot.
That's all right. We'll come back to you when necessary. Unless someone else has something else pertinent on this matter, let's hear what the superintendent has to suggest on some of these other items here.
Yeah, so before we transition, we have two other items in this area, transportation and community conversation update. And I also don't want to not give Dr. Sinha an opportunity. She usually.
I don't have any.
She doesn't have anything. Okay, I didn't want to miss it. The one thing that I would like to put in the board's ear for consideration and maybe more detailed conversation at our October work session is just the toll of all of this. We just had a big conversation about what this might do to the folks who are responsible for data collection, collecting permission slips, notifying parents, reminding parents. It's a lot on them, but it's a lot on all of the staff in almost every area. It's tremendously tough for our teachers. If you've ever been a teacher, there's nothing more difficult than to try to teach a lesson, and today you have 3 kids out, and tomorrow it's a different 3, and then Friday it's a different 3 for various reasons, and you're trying to just make sure everybody gets what they need. So you're constantly cycling back and extending deadlines and trying to remember who owes what by when, and you can't return something because everybody hasn't even turned it in. And if you take away my planning period, it just adds to it. Our staff are working extremely hard. That was just the scenario from the teachers. You understand the scenario for the nurses. It's not like COVID only happens from the hours of 9 to 3, and that's when we'll make these phone calls. They are calling at night from their personal phones. And often, if you've ever made phone calls, everybody doesn't answer on the first ring. They don't call you back. You find yourself calling again and again and again. And I know the question has come up, well, why are we finding out 3 days later? And because sometimes that's when we find out, and we do the best to make those calls. So the folks who are making those calls, which initially was a small team, it's now expanding beyond the school nurses, beyond the help in LaTanya's office, principals, assistant principals, school counselors, behavior coaches, whoever can make those phone calls, they all are doing that. And we're seeing the impact of, various quarantines on class coverage. We're seeing it in transportation. You probably got messages today regarding the bus drivers having to do multiple runs for transportation. And this building typically empties out pretty quickly because this is the bus aid backup building. So you have folks even here who left their positions today to go and ride buses and assist to make sure that our kids are getting home safely. So the whole staff is really struggling. And I know that you all are aware that we have to have school in person 5 days a week. Last year, we did have Mondays as a teacher work day, and it was a student independent work remote day, but it helped to have that day. It helped staff have what I call time to decompress, go back and catch up and do what they need to do. We don't have that now, and they have twice as many kids in their class. So recently there was an article in the paper about what another school division is doing with regard to having early dismissal days to provide teachers with time, staff with time, I will say, to sort of mitigate and manage the work. And of course, many of my staff have brought that to my attention, as well as some other options that we just might try so that we preserve the staff who are delivering the services. What I would like to do is work with a small team of both administrators and maybe get some school-based folks to explore some options and bring some options to the board for the board to consider. Is there a way that this school board can find some time while still providing what we need for students, but let's also provide some time for our staff to do this amazing job that they have to do right now to provide services for students, address academic learning loss, and also just mitigate COVID. So at the work session, I'd like to come back It may require that we alter our calendar, which is where I would need board permission if we do anything changing our calendar, but have a fruitful discussion about what possibilities or options are there for our staff. Because this is, as much as I'd like to say I got happy in June when I thought it was going away, it's still here. And what I would like to make sure is still here, all my staff. I really want all of my staff to still be here. And I want my staff to bring the best selves to work so that our kids get the best staff. So if that's okay for the October work session, that we carve some time to have a discussion about that.
I see nodding heads around the room.
Absolutely,
Mr. Trost, I
absolutely,
can't see
yes.
you, but I think that we care about, we're leading with care, and we care about our teachers, and so we would be very vested in hearing. And if any board members have any input, please share that with the
Yes.
superintendent in advance of the work session.
Okay, thank you. All right, on to a quick transportation update. And I have transportation crew here, Ms. Laconage. I also have Mr. Gatsky, and we also have our new transportation director. But I believe I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Gatsky to give us a quick update and then a formal introduction. So, Mr. Gatsky.
First of all, I'd like to welcome Hope Custer, our new director, started yesterday. That will be a big step forward for the transportation department. We are also doing some things that hopefully will show some progress in the department. We have been hiring some drivers and aides. Unfortunately, we've lost some staff too in the meantime, but we have, we're in the plus column by 2 or 3 on drivers and about the same on aides. We are getting ready to address the driver compensation issue. That should be announced and rolled out to the staff within the next day or 2. So we're hoping that will help retain drivers and also attract new drivers. Our operations manager reviewed all the different routes that we have and combined some routes and made some changes for that increase efficiency in the department. So unfortunately, those efficiencies are hard to see when you have the vacancies that we have and absentees that we have. When it's not, absenteeism is not rampant. However, you get 1 or 2 that you don't expect out, and all of a sudden, they're scrambling around, doubling up routes and things like that, which we try to let the parents know when that's happening. But a lot of times it's last minute. We have dispatchers, mechanics, secretaries, all driving. We have getting help from admin and facilities and whatever to cover phones, drive vans. So it's all hands on deck. And like I said, things are improving, but it is slow. And one of the last things we are doing is we're trying to recruit from within to see if anybody wants to get a CDL. We will provide the training, and we're hoping to get some interest in that. I think that's it.
Ms. Laconage or Ms. Custer, I don't know if you're on. Would you like to add or say any words at this time before we take questions?
Hi, I just want to say thank you all for this opportunity, and I'm really looking forward to making some improvements around here. Thank you.
So that's day 2 for her.
Well, we welcome all necessary improvements. Any questions for this portion of the community update? Dr. Carter.
I just heard that in Massachusetts, they had the military help with the transportation. And then they found out that the CDL exam was only given in English. So they worked with their, I guess, state and made it available in different languages. And now they have an abundance of drivers. And I was meaning to look to see, hopefully Virginia has it in another language than
That I
English.
don't know, Mr. Gasky, that might be a question for you to review, whether or not Virginia offers the CDL test in another language other than English.
But when they changed that, they got a ton of applicants.
Yes, we can certainly look into that. One item of interest is that our is fully certified to not only train, but also test on site. So a candidate for a CDL goes into our training program. They can do everything on site, including receiving their CDL license. We can do that all on site.
All right, very good. And Dr. Carter, thank you for that. And the Bodertot people who, and persons who found out about that. In Lynchburg City Schools, we are open. I do think that there's a benefit in knowing what others do, that do it well, and we can see where that may or may not fit here. But we want to be at the cutting edge. Dr. Gupta.
You know, could board members volunteer and get a CDL license and help you out? You first. Yeah, I'll take it.
I couldn't.
And that is a beautiful thought. Now, I don't think any of you all want me driving your children around. Barely can get you all around. But Dr. Gupta, that's the commitment you bring to the table. That's wonderful. Any other comments or thoughts? All right, Dr. Edwards, you.
Okay, one last very nice thing under this LCS community update. Just thank you to the community for all of the patience and understanding that you have been showing us and giving us during these times while we're in the middle of this pandemic. I will also say, if you are someone who is at home in the day and maybe have some time in the middle of the day, we will be posting various positions for, and they're CARES funded one-year positions for assistance to help us with either some of the learning loss or monitoring, helping kids in the lunchroom, various things, contact tracing. We're open to having our community help us with these tasks as we try to help our children receive the best education possible. So be looking out on our website. You never know, there might be something there that's just part-time that you're like, hey, I might want to do that. And we would appreciate you for signing up for that. Last on this section is a community conversations update, which really speaks to our commitment to engage our community in person when we can, virtually when it's not as favorable for in person. But I want to turn it over to Director Reeves to talk a little bit about that. And if you're talking, Director Reeves, you are muted.
Mr. Gasky is stealing the show.
All right. In the absence of getting Director Reeves, she might be up in a bit. We are going to be hosting some community conversations. We're going to try to do them in person if we can, but if not, we will host them virtually. We did some of those last year. And they will just be topics that are relevant at that time. So it's not a slated over the next 12 months. We will be talking about a specific topic, everything from COVID in our community to other things academically, achievement. We are just open really for finding ways to get out in the community and not just assuming that perhaps our board meeting or our parent advisory meetings or PTO meetings are those are wonderful ways to talk with us and talk to us. But we want to make sure that we're engaging everyone in our community. So we will be posting a series of dates. I do believe they're going to be starting in November, where small teams of us and board members are invited to join us on any of these. So I will be sending you some of those dates. Are invited to join us for very informal conversations with our families and residents and community members. So more to come on that as part of the update.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Mr. Chair, Mr. Trost is saying he's wondering whether there's an internet problem. He says he's also having trouble communicating.
Wow.
Can you hear me?
There we go.
We can, Director Reeves.
I'm running around trying to find internet connection. It's unstable on my end.
So you want to get, I gave a little update. If you have a better update, it would be great.
The better update, I don't know that I have, but I will say that we are planning the community conversations. We have looked at 2 dates, November 22nd and October 24th. We're hoping to get a third one in there. We're going to go through the community. It's very important for us to hear from the community. We will have selected topics that we will be addressing at the community conversations. And as soon as we get those particular locations, I will be sharing that information, communicating that information out to everyone.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
That's it. I'm sorry.
All right, thank you, Director Reeves, and whoever is negotiating the technology, if you could check on Mr. Trost. It's very important that he be able to access electronically. Before we move on, Dr.
I'm back. I'm back, Chairman.
Dr. Edwards, we do want to thank you and your staff. There are many school divisions who do not take the time to update the community, and it's very standoffish. And so, once again, thank you for leading with care that the community understands some of these complexities as we seek to deal with a health crisis and educate kids at the same time. All right, now I think we should be able to move on nicely. We will now move into Section K, new business. There are 2 items for us to discuss tonight, and we will deal with the first one with it being for action after discussion, capital improvement projects. Dr. Edwards, if you can bring on Mr. Gasky.
Yes, Mr. Gasky, if you would, I know that you have some information to share with us about capital improvements and a little bit of a CARES flip-flop, and I will remind the board that we will have a full CARES presentation at the work session, so you'll get all of it. So this part is just the CARES and capital improvement.
Yes. I'm bringing 2 documents. These were presented to the Finance and Operations Committee back on September 28th. And what they pertain to is basically swapping CARES funds for local funds for some of our HVAC projects, which then frees up that money, that local money, for other projects that do not qualify for CARES. So that's what this first page is. We have 4 HVAC projects, 3 chiller replacements, and then hopefully an upgrade or a replacement of the heating system at Dunbar Middle. By funding those with CARES, that frees up about $1.5 million for other projects that, as I said, don't qualify for CARES. And those, the 3, what we're hoping to do, 3 projects that are listed at the bottom, which is the EC Glass turf replacement, building a new service entrance and road out at the Transportation and Maintenance Building, and putting some money in for playground equipment replacement and upgrades. So all of that is just, that is those projects. That money has already been funded. It's there. We are just changing the source. On the second page that I have, if we can go to that. Okay. So this is basically all the CARES funds or projects that we have so far. The first one is EC Glass intercom replacement, which is actually underway right now. The next group is the list of the HVAC projects. You can see it involves quite a few of our schools. 4 of those projects appeared on the other page, but this is a complete listing of all the CARES projects that we will be in the CIP. And then we're looking at building a restroom down on the athletic fields at Dunbar. And then we have citywide broadband. And all of that comes up to about 9.7, 9.8 million. And this will be presented to City Council in the near future. And we are looking for approval.
First of all, are there
Are there any questions?
Yes, are there any questions, first of all, from Mr. Gasky? Dr. Gupta?
I have a comment. I have heard several times today about reference to presented at Finance Committee, and I have asked that before. And I know there's no hidden thing. I see Mr. Gatsky's documents there in the board docs. But I'm hoping and assuming that anything which is shared in the Finance Committee will be made public through the board docs, because not every board member is present there, not every committee member. And board doc is we have to share, and it's on the board docs.
Thank you, Dr. Gupta. The chair would like to address that.
This is what was presented at the Finance Committee, exactly this. So you have available what we saw.
What I'm saying is any handouts. I'm not saying
Anything, the health insurance stuff is exactly the same stuff, except he didn't have updated numbers for, the projected health expenditures. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Nillis. Dr. Gupta, thank you for your question and for the response. All right, the chair certainly would be willing to entertain a motion to approve the requested capital improvement project reallocation and the additional CARES funded projects.
I move that the board approves the requested capital improvement project reallocation and the additional CARES funded projects.
Moved by Dr. Carter, is a second by Ms. Morrison. Any further questions or discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, if you would please call the roll on the motion on the floor.
School Board Member Trost,
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Brennan,
Yes.
School Board Member Ms. Morrison,
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Carter,
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Coleman,
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Nellis,
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Sinha,
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Gupta,
yes.
School Board Member Mr. Harvey.
Yes.
Motion carries 9-0.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Also, please make note, and we'll discuss this later, but if it's finance and operations is the official name of the committee, maybe we need to have that.
Finance and facility.
The finance and facilities, or whatever the appropriate term is. Let that be so noted. Thank you. All right, second item under new business is health insurance premiums. This is a action building on the earlier presentation by Mr. Smith, Dr. Edwards.
Yep, and once again, we started this at the beginning, and I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Lakonich to talk a little bit more about the health insurance.
Good evening. Yes, this is just a continuation of the presentation that was to the Finance and Facilities Committee, as well as the special presentation earlier this evening. And the recommendation with the projected shortfall was the 7%, where LCS, the employer, had the 7% increase as of July 1, was to consider the 7% increase to the employee. And we provided the data of what that was going to look like, and we were bringing it to you to get your recommendation. And it is coming for action tonight because we have open enrollment that starts on October 25th, and we need to have time to educate the staff, get that information out there so they can make the best choice for them.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Lakonich, and I feel good having sat through the previous discussion at the Finance and Facilities Committee and Mr. Smith's presentation today, and that numbers, may say one thing, but it really doesn't move the needle much on
That's it.
behalf of our employees, and so I feel good about it. Are there questions for Ms. Laconich at this time? If not, then there's certainly an order for a motion in regard to the health insurance premium. That you would approve the 7%.
I move to adjust the employee contribution to 7% increase as recommended.
I'll second.
Moved by Dr. Miller, seconded by Ms. Morrison. Is there further questions or discussion? Dr. Brennan?
Yeah, I would just say that I don't feel very good about this proposal. I think that, as we know, our staff, as far as their salaries go, are below what we think they should be and what surrounding counties are, and we're very limited as far as what we can do with their salaries. I think health insurance is a tremendous benefit for our staff. I mean, I think that it's something I'm sure that they appreciate, and we want to give it to them. Even though it's a relatively small amount of money, they make a small amount of money as it is, and we give them a raise. It's usually a very small amount that they get by the STEPS process. So I really would like to see the administration look at this process, look at the plan, look at the benefits of the plan. If it's a Cadillac plan, I think most places haven't had a Cadillac plan in a long time, and see if they can help adjust the cost of it. But I would not vote for this, because I don't think the staff should have to pay more for their health insurance.
Thank you, Dr. Brennan. Dr. Carter?
And I'm in agreement with that also. I know that we have found ways to pay if we are seeing that the claims are more than what we have, we're able to cover. So I'm really not for increasing their health premiums at this time. They're already feeling overwhelmed, and this will just be another, it maybe seems small, but now is not the time. I just don't feel this is the time.
Okay, we'll come back. I think I saw Mr. Harvey, then Dr. Gupta, then Ms. Morrison.
Yeah, I will also not be voting in favor of an increase in the employee contribution for many of the reasons that have been stated here. I feel like that we have a way, we have several tools in our toolbox that we can address this. When you look at the difference in costs with the surplus, with this increase, we're talking about being able to approximately $100,000 in the 6 months period to help offset by increasing our employees. We have a deficit of over 400,000. So if we're only talking about, with this increase to them, only addressing 100,000 of that deficit, I don't think this is sizable for us to do this. I think there are other tools that we can utilize within the school board's budget to be able to handle some of this. And I would also encourage, I agree with Dr. Brennan, his suggestion about looking at the plan, and I know we're always under these time crunches, but I would like to see, if we're going to look at the plan, let's put that out to the employees. Let them help tell us what they would like. If they would rather have a higher deductible based on a lower cost plan or something, I think it's only fair. It's their health care insurance. We're the ones making the decision ultimately, and there's a responsibility for that, but I would like to have their input on it as well.
Thank you, Mr. Harvey. Dr. Gupta?
So if I'm making $50,000 a year, a 3% increase to me is $1,500. What you're telling me is, by this increase, if I'm on an employee plus family plan, you gotta take away $500 a year out of that. So if you take the inflation into account, I'm starting the new year behind than where I was in the previous year. So as Dr. Brennan says, our salaries are already lowest compared to counties, although they don't matter much. And then on top of that, you put a 7% in burden on these employees and take that raise out is unacceptable. We have a $100 million budget. For $400,000 is 0.4% of that. There should be other cuts we should be looking to make up for that difference.
Thank you, Dr. Gupta. Ms.
My question is, if we don't do that, where will we get the money?
Because we already know that our pool has really gotten low.
Well, in the past, as I think Dr. Gupta and Mr. Harvey said, we've been able to cover it, but remember, we've had vacancies for which there were employees that we wanted to hire who didn't take health insurance because they weren't here. So that money was sitting there such that we can move from the health benefits to cover the health benefits in that instance. And we've continued to do that whenever we have shortfalls. That's not a sustainable plan. Obviously, we want the employees and we want to be fully staffed, but I know that's one method that we've been using to cover it. Ms. Lakonich, are there other areas or places where you would anticipate taking this from?
You're correct. We usually look at the any salary lapses in the positions that we budgeted because they were vacant at the time, so we were assuming that they took the full coverage, and that's usually how we, with those options, cover any of the shortfall. So we would look at doing that as well. I did want to point out, because we just went through the RFP process, and previously they had mentioned that they wanted us to look at some different options for our employees. We just finalized that process and with the city, and we will be looking at doing a lot of that, but we wanted to educate before we rolled it out to the staff. So that is something, I don't want you to think that we weren't taking your previous guidance. That it's just with the RFP just being finalized, we did not have the information to pass on.
I'm not sure if I heard an answer to Ms. Morrison's question. Maybe it was about some of these possibilities. And to come right back to you, Ms. Morrison, what I thought I heard you say is, Dr. Edwards, that we have a lot of positions in the past that we didn't fill and doubled up. And quite frankly, I'm not interested in more work being dumped on individuals because we're not filling positions that we need. And with learning loss and the need for the creation of so many things and not the ability to ensure we have CARES money going forward, I'm very concerned about how we think all of this is going to happen.
Well, that was is that we voted last year to do 7 instead of 10. And now we're looking at, we funded that, and now we're looking at how we're going to fund the next part. And at some point, we're not going to be able to do it. And how long can we continue to do this? Did the city raise their employees' rates?
No, they did not for this upcoming year. They actually were talking about how when the schools seem to be having bad years, they seem to be on the flip side. So they are going to wait and look at that again next year.
Mr. Harvey?
Yeah, I mean, my position would be, you know, we have the ability to do it for a period of 6 months. And when we are sitting around this table again, looking at the budget, that's when we address this. I think I agree with Dr. Brennan. I mean, this is a benefit to our employees, and to even, and this is why I asked the question earlier, you know, the 7% increase, I think we need to make sure everyone understands it's 7% of the employee's costs that they currently pay, which equates to, for an individual employee, $2.16. It's not a sizable amount of money for those on an individual plan, but I personally think it's I don't want to say demoralizing, but it's kind of it's something that we as a board can handle, we can address for our employees, and I think we should. And that's why I think we should use the ability that we have within our current budget to address it till the time period that we look at developing our budget for next year, and we account for it in our budget for next year.
Thank you, Mr. Harvey. Ms. Morrison?
Do we have that capability to cover it financially for 6 months, and then we don't, and what happens in June when we don't have the money to do it then?
Do have, I mean, we have vacancies that we, you know, are still trying to fill, and as long, you know, as time goes on and those haven't been filled, that does provide some surplus. We also do have the reserve at the city if we did find ourselves in a situation where we needed to pull from that. But you're right, at some point when we get fully staffed, that's no longer going to be an option.
The maker of the motion, Dr. Nilles?
I do recall it was a couple of years ago and we had a pretty significant increase in healthcare expenses. It was not a pleasant experience for me as a board member. So just toss that out there. These projections are projections, and we've had some good years, and you know, it's I guess there's a lot of volatility associated with annual costs, and you take a best guess, and then you cross your fingers and hope.
Thank you, Dr. Nilles. There is a motion on the floor. There is a second. There has been significant discussion. Of course, I would prefer to see the board together where we are. We all want the very best for our employees. We all want them to take home and utilize that for the betterment of themselves and their families. I think we're all clear on that. At the same time, we've got an operation, a division that has to be sustainable. So what is the motion is on the floor? I haven't heard any thoughts about taking it off the floor.
Call the vote.
Yeah.
Then we're gonna go with the
Move
vote.
on.
All right, Madam Clerk, let's be clear on what we're voting on.
Mr. Chairman, one point. Following up on Mr. Harvey, I mean, do we know what the employees want? I mean, we only have 930 singles that are going to increase by $2, and 193 families that actually will do the $450 or so a year extra. And do we know what they want?
Can someone answer that? And what is the long-term impact of this decision to do this for 6 months and then come back? I can't answer these questions.
Ms. Laconich, to the best of our ability, I do not think that we have surveyed the staff regarding what they want for health insurance.
That is correct. We have not surveyed the staff.
Well, I don't think we can increase their premiums halfway through the year either, can we?
We can't.
No.
I mean,
Doesn't sound like you
year.
would be able to, no.
Yeah.
But again, that was a suggestion by one of the
Right.
board members. All right, if there's no further questions from the board members, we're going to ask you to cast your votes, Dr. Carter.
Well, that's a good point that Dr. Nilles stated. It's for the entire January to the next.
From January to December.
Yeah.
December.
Mm-hmm.
Just want to add also that I think when this presentation by Mr. Smith occurred in the Finance Committee last year, it was said at that time that this should be a process that starts in January, the policy is looked at, the estimates are looked at, and it's clearly done in a step-by-step process, so that when we get to this point, we really feel like it truly has been vetted appropriately. And I think that between the presentation earlier, which I think was somewhat helpful, and then going right to the fact of going to the increase in the percentage of employees, I think I've been a little disappointed by that as far as the information provided.
Thank you, Dr. Brennan. We're going to ask that the clerk would call the roll. If you, yes, Dr. Sinha.
Again, what we are voting on?
The motion that was, yes, ma'am, the motion that was made by Dr. Nilles and seconded by Ms. Morrison is to approve the 7% employee premium increase that will be effective January 1, 2022, and go for a full year. Yes.
But if what Dr. Dillis said is true, that we can't change the deduction in January, so we would have to cover it through June 30th, correct?
Or December.
January.
Yeah, all the way through
Yes,
December.
but the fiscal, the salary year is July 1. So what I'm trying to clarify is we've got a mismatch of calendars. We can't change the deduction we're charging everybody on the plan until July 1. Is that correct? Am I understanding what?
I don't know that to be factually correct, so I would have to research to see if
Okay.
that's, I don't know that.
Yeah, I'm
That
just
doesn't
trying to
mean that's not
clarify
correct.
The point that Dr. Nillis made, that we can't, did I misunderstand what you were saying?
No, I don't believe we can change their premium in the middle of the year. I mean, it's the plan years, January to through December, and this is what we're committing to. And
Okay.
our budget year is set by 6 months, but, you know, it's always been that way.
Okay, never mind.
So you have open enrollment period, and then they have the plan year of the entire calendar year of 2022. So we would have to look at making that change. If we didn't do it now, it would come back up for discussion for the following 2023.
Thank you for that clarification, Mr. Lakonich. If everyone is clear on the motion that you're voting up or down, we will ask the clerk to please call the roll.
School Board Member Trost,
No.
School Board Member Dr. Brennan,
No.
School Board Member Ms. Morrison,
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Carter,
No.
School Board Member Dr. Coleman,
Yes?
School Board Member Dr. Nillis,
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Sinha,
No.
School Board Member Dr. Gupta,
No.
School Board Member Mr. Harvey.
No.
So the motion fails.
Yes, the motion fails 6-3.
Thank you so kindly. We'll now move into the next item of our agenda, which is the super, oh, I am so sorry. I'm trying to move so fast. What did I need to do?
Well, we voted for them not to pay it, but do we need a motion that the school board's going to pick it up?
Thank you, Ms. Morrison. In my haste to move
Or
on,
people.
excuse me, so we can have order. What needs to happen now at this point? Any of the prevailing side persons, that we have a suggestion of what we are to do? Mr. Harvey?
My understanding is that the administration continues to pay for it based out of the accounts that we have dedicated for employee health costs. Then, as we start to develop our budget, school board, we need to allow a line item for this increase in employee benefits to be included into the budget, which would hopefully, which should carry us that extra 6 months through their renewal, and then we'll, again, we'll have to look at it again if the costs continue to increase. We'll have to look at it again for the 2023 or 2024 budget as well, so.
Okay, Mr. Harvey has given one pondering reality. Is that meritable, Dr. Edwards or Ms. Lakonich?
So.
Yes, that's a base.
Go ahead.
That is what we normally do. Yeah, we will monitor it every month to look and see how the funding stands. And we initially will go to any budget line that's for health insurance that may not be used, again, because either the position's vacant or it was filled by someone who did not opt to take the health insurance. And then we could actually fund it through the means that it was already for health insurance. And then once we deplete that, then we would look at other sources. And if we have to do a budget transfer, then it would come back to the board.
All right, thank you. Dr. Gupta?
I'm assuming you got the $60,000 sitting there in the school board insurance account. So that's a money which can readily be used.
Yes, sir.
Other places.
Very good point, Dr. Gupta. Once again, those monies will not be there in the future. All right. If they're all clear on that, thank you, Ms. Morrison, for slowing me
Just wanted
down
to
there.
make sure we were clear.
Very good. Thank you so much. All right, Section L, Superintendent comment?
Yes, first I'd just like to say thank you to our 2 student reps who did an outstanding job presenting tonight. And we had the opportunity to meet with all 4 of them, and we have an excellent group of reps. I'm excited to work with all of them this school year, and just their commitment to the work, to their schools, to us, and to this community is noteworthy. So kudos to them. Since we had our last board meeting, We've had some fun things happen. We got to participate in the Strubant Scholarship Reveal and surprised Desmaria Harris at Lincoln Middle School with the award from the Strubant Foundation, which is a scholarship award. So kudos to her, and thank you to the Strubants for being a wonderful partner in supporting our students. I think I've had probably 3 or 4 wonderful meetings with our new city manager, Winter Bender, who has fit right in with our crew. We met as a city schools leadership team. We met as a city schools admin team, and he came over and just met some of my staff here as well. And it looks like we're off to a really great start in that partnership with city and schools. So looking forward to that. Mr. Trost gets the award for the most attentive, the only new board member for his completion of all 3 of the new board member orientation meetings. And he was just so great to work with. He asked such great questions. We ended up getting some great suggestions from him as well in the conversations. So thank you, Mr. Trost, and thank you to my entire staff for working with Mr. Trost, and as we move forward to his tenure on the board, and he is already a contributing member, and we appreciate him. You're welcome. We continue to do some work, speaking of budget, next year. It is almost budget time. We are in October, and Ms. Laconage and I start that process at the end of the month, going to the schools and then starting on crafting the budget for the next school year. We do have compensation as one of our priorities. I think that's been my priority since I've been here with establishing pay tables. So we continue to move forward and look at different groups and classes and try to increase the salaries and making ourselves more marketable and competitive here in Lynchburg City Schools. So we will be doing that as well. Got to go to the Jug Bowl. What a terrific nail-biter game. I just want to congratulate both teams because I've never seen so much heart on the field as I did at that game. So congratulations to both teams for their efforts and their hard work, and you really couldn't leave that game until the very, very end. It was so much, so entertaining, but we have some talented students. So kudos to them, the coaches, and all of the fans who came out to support our staff. We want to thank the First Lady Northam for visiting our preschool program and coming to Hutchinson Early Learning Center. Thank you, Hutchinson staff, for such short notice and turning around a wonderful visit that she had, and board members also attended. And she read with our students, so we certainly appreciate that and the support that we got from her visit here. I think the students told you that October 2nd, which is a Saturday, but we celebrated on the 1st, National Custodian Appreciation Day, and we too appreciate our custodian, Mr. Barnes here, who also sets up the boardroom for us, and we surprised him with a little celebration on Friday. And once again, I just want to welcome, you got to see her live and in person on day 2, Hope Custer, who is joining us as our Director of Transportation and already having a positive and significant impact. The 2 young ladies who gave presentations talked a lot about the sports programs at both high schools. Just know that we have an active sports program at our middle schools as well, and if you go on their websites, you will see a variety of sporting events that you can also attend to support our middle school students as well. So I'm planning on trying to get out next week, the rest of this week, to see some middle school students compete as well. So thank you.
Wow, thank you, Dr. Edwards, for those comments. All right, very good. Now we will have board comments, and we'll start with Mr. Harvey.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to send a shout out to Dr. Miller at Darrington Elementary School. I know a couple of my fellow board members were included on some of the emails and participated in that program in which they put together care packages and delivered them to kids that are at Lynchburg General Hospital. What I thought was so incredible is the opportunity, the teaching opportunity that was shared with the students at Darrington on, caring for other people. And this was a project that the students were highly involved with. But, I wanted to say a special thank you to Dr. Miller for sort of heading up that program and being thoughtful enough to not only think about the young people at the hospital, but also to be thinking about her students and ways that she can help them to care about their fellow community members as well. So just wanted to bring that to the forefront.
Thank you, Mr. Harvey. Very good. Dr. Gupta.
I just want faculty and staff and every employee at LCS to know that we care, and we will not make them fall behind in their salaries as we go forward. So,
Thank you, Dr. Gupta. Dr. Sinha.
Well, I already reported on going to the Legislative Advocacy Conference, and so I'm grateful to the city for arranging for me to do that, the schools for arranging for me to do that, and grateful to their VSBA for putting it on. I also was invited to tour Hutcherson. Dr. Brennan, who sponsors that school as part of our outreach, was kind enough to invite me along, and I'll let him talk in more depth about it, but it was really an impressive tour. They're doing wonderful things. The kids were having a great time. It's really quite impressive what's happening there. So grateful to Ms. Polly Smith for giving us an hour of her time to walk us around the school and talk about what they're doing.
Thank you, Dr. Sinha. Dr. Nillis.
No comments.
Thank you, Dr. Nillis. Dr. Carter.
Just want to say again how happy I am that we have our student representatives, and it's a commitment, especially since they're already in the 12th grade and they have plenty of things to do, for them to take on this portion. To be a student rep at this time, it's just really appreciated. And thanks to Susan, Mrs. Morrison, I presented on board governance to a class at Randolph College. And they were very receptive and just chuckled when they said that we were doing all this for a sandwich at one point. But that was just too funny. And also just want to thank all the people in the community for their thoughts and prayers. Was stopped by a pastor when I was out, and he just said that he was praying for us, and that was just so comforting to know. Just a shout out to just the community for thinking of us and keeping us in their thoughts and prayers at this time. And a shout out to all the custodians, because they do a wonderful job, and our schools and the floors are just beautiful. And I know they're doing extra measures now, so that's just commendable.
Thank you, Dr. Carter. Mrs. Morrison.
I just have two quick comments, and the first one is to Dr. Edwards. I appreciate you looking at ways that we can give some relief to our staff. Having been a building principal and having to make arrangements for staff to cover classes, adopt curriculum that you've not taught before, and not to have any time away when you need time to do your work. And it's always been that way at the elementary schools, but it's that way now everywhere. So I really appreciate that, and hope that we can do something quickly so that we can give some relief. The second thing is that the arts are alive in Lynchburg. We saw some. Easy Glass did Big Love this past weekend. I'm glad to hear they're moving from the small theater to the big auditorium so that more people can attend safely. I know they have I Hate Hamlet and Come Together, which is going to be a pretty amazing show. Mr. Jim Ackley, the former director at Glass, is coming back for I Hate Hamlet.
That's powerful. Thank you, Ms. Morrison. Dr. Brennan.
I just want to briefly echo what some of my colleagues have said. I want to shout out and a thanks to Dr. Annette Miller at Darrington, who did a wonderful job with the care bags. I was honored to be part of that. A thanks to Mrs. Polly Smith at Hutchison Earlier Learning, who hosted Dr. Stinyan and myself. I have to say I can't take all the credit for going there. My wife, who's involved with pre-K education, said I had to go, so that's why I went. But Dr. Stinyan was nice to go with me, but they really do a phenomenal job. We saw their new 3-year-old pre-K program, which was great. And I also want to make my sort of monthly statement about COVID-19, which it looks like maybe things are getting a little better, that maybe there's a little dip in the numbers. But unfortunately, in the United States, we've also just passed 700,000 people that have died. Now 1 in 500 residents in the United States have died of COVID-19, which is really unbelievable. As Dr. Edwards pointed out, Lynchburg just inched over the 40% mark for vaccination, which is still so poor. The state is at 60. The country is better than that. That is really the answer to this problem, is to get vaccinated. So I would end with just saying, love your neighbor, get vaccinated. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Brennan. Mr. Trost.
Yes. Well, first of all, I want to thank my colleagues for allowing me to contribute and enjoy the meeting and attend the meeting via Zoom. I appreciate that. And secondly, I want to give a shout out to the Power Scholars Program. I am so encouraged by what those people have done. Dr. Jordan and Miss Rebecca White, director of the program, in just 19 days and providing the education to these youngsters over the summer, and the improvements they gained over 19 days, just fantastic. And really want to tell those folks how much I appreciate their work, and I think they obviously have done a good job, so kudos to them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Trost. And I would just give my last comments by simply saying one more time to Dr. Edwards, and I typically do not make these type of statements lightly, but I have to say it. Over the last few weeks, you have just gone above and beyond what is expected to hold things together. And you do it without complaining. You do it without creating any undue stress for this board. You just do what you have to do to get it done. And to you and your staff, I have to commend you as board chair. It's no way that anyone could understand what a superintendent of a school division in 2021 across this nation has to deal with. And we are very fortunate to have you here. And I know that you and your staff are working every day to do what is best to make sure that our employees and our students have the best and are treated the best. And I want to thank you for that. I also would like to let you know I have my written report, so I wouldn't dare read it. You can look at it. And I do want you to know that the Virginia High School League has created a special committee in light of some of the more racial motivated types of things going on around the Commonwealth, and I am representing VSBA and Lynchburg on that, and I just want you to know that. And then I sent out a video that you can look at of the leading edge that went out across the Commonwealth about the award that we received for equity work. And so since I'm on it and it says Lynchburg City School Board, I wanted to inform you that I was briefly on that, just briefly. All right. With that having been said, if there's nothing else, I would now like to go to the informational items. You see the informational items listed. Our October the 7th Master Board session is still on the table as of right now, and so please govern yourselves accordingly for October the 7th from 2 to 7. So please regard that, and you see the other dates that are recorded there, and I won't review those because they're right there for you to see. Yes, ma'am. Dr. Sinha.
Sorry to interrupt, but November 16th, we have a work session planned.
Yes.
There's a early bird session of VSBA that day, and a lot of us will be traveling.
Oh, yes.
Conference that day.
I will be there. And so if thank you, Dr. Sinha, if you would allow the chair, vice chair, and the board clerk will get some thoughts together and call the board members so that we can rearrange that date or determine whether or not we need it or not. Thank you, Dr. Sinha. All right, if there's nothing else, I would now like the board to consider in section O, that the school board approve a motion to convene a closed meeting to discuss the following as permitted by the Code of Virginia, section 2.2 -3711A, And that number one, that the school board needs to convene a closed meeting for the purpose of a brief discussion around the superintendent's evaluation and pursuant to the Virginia Code Section 2.2, 3711, A1, a personnel matter involving the demotion, discipline, or resignation of a specific employee. And so, is there a motion for us to go into closed meeting?
I move that we go into close.
Second.
Been moved by Dr. Carter, seconded by Ms. Morrison. Any further questions or discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
School Board Member Trost,
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Brennan,
Yes.
School Board Member Ms. Morrison.
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Carter,
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Coleman,
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Nellis,
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Sinha,
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Gupta,
Yes.
School Board Member Mr. Harvey.
Yes.
Motion carries 9-0.
All right, we will now go into closed meeting, and these should be very brief. Dr. Edwards, you do not need to join us in this.
You need to wait the 5 minutes for them to come turn off the mics.
Oh, yeah,
and
we're
then they
gonna wait.
gotta come
Oh,
upstairs.
yes, we're gonna.
Mr. Chairman, I have a separate link to go through.
Policy does allow you to talk to the attorney, so get him on this separately. Let's break for 5 minutes so that we can do all of the things
Make sure
that
the
we
front
just
door is
stated.
locked.
Okay,
We have-
right. So the
Yes,
front
Mr.
door-
Harvey?
Right here.
I mean, I
Lobby.
don't think this needs
Lobby.
to be in session or not, but one thing I would like for us to consider is with some of our committee meetings, if we could create a common time, because we have some at 3:30 and some at 3:45, if we could just make them all 3:45 or all 3:30.
I think that has some value to it. Because sometimes I wonder
We're all
myself.
at